My Marvel superhero girlfriend, welcome back, brave explorers of impossible worlds. We are excited to have you here to continue this odyssey together. Before we continue, everything you'll hear is pure fiction, so please don't try to replicate combat techniques at home. This wonderful story and all its rights belong to its brilliant original author. We are only the messengers of entertainment. Want another dose of adventure? Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a single chapter, and if you can't wait, our Patreon has exclusive surprises you'll love. Chapter 101 1001 Nights. Late at night, a single desk lamp cast a dim, non-glaring glow in the room. In the atmosphere, as if discussing the 1001 nights or a fairy tale, the little emperor first delighted in Nian's caress. Then, the fanged cat-like mouth of the element devourer cub lying on the bed slowly opened, revealing a miniature, bottomless black hole in its throat. Gulp. As Diana and Nian watched, a moment later, the little emperor spat out a palm-sized starfish. The starfish was a miniature version of the original Staro, a vibrantly colored creature with a slightly larger eye nestled in the center of its bizarre body. However, unlike its fragments, which only instinctively absorbed energy, the starfish's eyes shone with wisdom and emotion. It gazed at Nian and Diana, showing no signs of attack. Of course, even though Diana was quietly warming the bed, if the starfish showed any sign of attack, it would be wiped out in an instant. The little emperor also eyed the disgorged starfish eagerly. Though its very existence might have been solely to find Staro, it still chose to side with Nian. Under the wary and scrutinizing gazes of the god, the man, and the beast, the starfish, Staro's avatar, cast a deep glance at the little emperor who had disgorged it. Then, like a strange gentleman, it bowed to Nian and Diana beside it. It lacked a mouth, conveying its message through its mind. I'm deeply sorry. I misjudged you earlier. At that time, my heart was filled with vengeful rage and hatred. When I saw the black kitten, I mistakenly thought it was merely pretending to be a member of the Element Devourer clan, and I attacked without reason. It wasn't until it used its own unique ability that I realized it was truly an Element Devourer, a juvenile. The starfish's gaze fell on the little emperor, a hint of doting in its single eye. Nian nodded in understanding. At that moment, as a trinity, he certainly couldn't be considered an Element Devourer. Staro, is it okay to call you that? Nian asked. My pleasure, young sir. Starfish nodded quickly and bowed gently, exuding a very comfortable, gentlemanly air, a stark contrast to his cold, brutal demeanor back in the island nation. Nian's hand was still stroking little emperor's soft, slippery orange fur as he asked curiously, I want to know. Why does little emperor know you and keep wanting to find you? What's your relationship with him? For over 20 years, he's been looking for me. Starfish shuddered at the words, his single eye glistening with a shimmering light. Meow. Little emperor, seemingly unaware of Staro, narrowed his eyes in amusement, rubbing his adorable little head against Nian's hand, making the soft, milky noises of a normal cat. Nian instinctively sensed that the Staro was referring to wasn't the little emperor at the moment. Staro's clone was silent for a moment, his one eye filled with reminiscence, and then he sighed in his mind. Everything started more than 20 years ago. Gugu, an adult element devourer, and I are good friends. I like to float and wander freely in space, and Gugu likes to travel through various parts of the universe. We have been traveling together for a long time, approaching the legendary Asgard, the realm of the gods, touching the underworld where no living creatures exist, visiting the most prosperous central civilization of the Milky Way, crossing the space zone under the jurisdiction of the Green Lantern Corps, and witnessing hundreds of brilliant and beautiful space civilizations. Those naturally sound like very dangerous places, but when Staro is with an adult element devourer, his ability to stay alive is really too outrageous, and Nian has a deep understanding of this. Starfish paused, then continued in his mind, until, 22 years ago, Gugu and I arrived on Earth on Danvers's spaceship. Wait a minute. Nian didn't want to interrupt. There was something that really concerned him. Did you mention Danvers? Starfish replied, yes. Carol Danvers. She thought she was an alien, but she's actually a native Earthling. Nian was silent. He hadn't expected to hear that name from Staro. Carol Danvers. Nian had heard a few words about this woman from his schoolmate Kara Danvers' adoptive father when he was at her house. She was Kara's adoptive father's biological daughter, or in other words, Kara's sister. However, according to Kara's adoptive father, Carol Danvers had died long ago, the cause of death being a loss of control of a fighter plane during military training. Go on, Nian said, temporarily suppressing his doubts. After Danvers left Earth, Gugu and I stayed in this world. That was the beginning of the nightmare. Starfish recalled the events of that time, still feeling anger and palpitations. That day, Gugu and I briefly parted ways while out foraging. We were just floating in outer space, sunbathing, but I accidentally fell asleep. I was captured by a passing American spacecraft and taken directly to a research institute in the island nation of Kadamatis. Stero calmed down a bit and conveyed his thoughts. Next, as you should know, I was imprisoned there and studied for a full 20 years, only finally freed today. That's why I wanted to destroy that human city. Nian thought, looking at the kitten-like element devourer cub. So, Little Emperor is. Starfish nodded, also gazing at Little Emperor with doting eyes. Yes, it must be the offspring of Gugu's egg. Element devourers lay eggs. This was something Nian had not considered before. He was still mesmerized by Little Emperor's overly cat-like appearance. Gugu may have left Earth for some reason, leaving behind one of its eggs and carving a goal in its race's memory to find me. Although it hasn't found me in all these years, it still places its hopes on its offspring. Stero's clone's azure crystal eyes suddenly shed a drop of water as he spoke this thought. Meow. The Little Emperor, feeling something, gently placed one of his young paws on the starfish. Nian had one last question, and asked bluntly, are the devouring spaces of the elemental devourers interconnected? Not really, Stero explained. It just divides infinitely. Let's put it this way, when the first elemental devourer was born in the universe, its elemental devouring space was the same size as ours, the equivalent of a parallel universe. However, when it lays eggs and produces offspring, its elemental devouring space divides directly according to the number of eggs, and each new elemental devouring space becomes exclusive to a specific offspring. I see, Nian said, suddenly realizing it. Now, everything makes sense. So, the aliens and warship wreckage in Xia Ahuang's Yuan devouring space were swallowed by the adult Yuan devouring beast Gugu, and were split out along with this space when it laid eggs. Chapter 102 Extraordinary Family Configuration. At night, in the slightly cozy room, the conversation was about space trillions of light years away. Understanding the story between Stero and the Devourer, Nian sighed with emotion. He looked at Stero's split form, the starfish, and said, Stero, what do you want to do next? If you want, I can set you free and let you leave Earth on your own. Of course, if you want to continue destroying cities, even if I agree, the person next to me won't agree. What are you talking about? Diana smiled faintly, and her cool, delicate fingers tapped his brow. The starfish thought carefully, then glanced at the Little Emperor beside her, and then conveyed her thoughts. I want to stay on Earth. If Gugu returns one day, it can find me directly through its offspring. However, it's not convenient for my original body to be outside right now. Can I stay in the Little Emperor's devourer space for a while? Nian glanced at his Aunt Diana beside him. Diana nodded without objection, her thin eyebrows slender and calm, her lips parted slightly. Of course, as long as you don't harm humans. Haixing nodded quickly. Don't worry, I never meant to harm humans. I was just seeking revenge against the forces that imprisoned me. By the way, Stero, what's your gender? Nian suddenly asked curiously. No gender, what's wrong? Stero's clone responded, puzzled. It had a good impression of this human boy, who was also caring for Gugu's family. Nothing, Nian waved, dismissing it. He thought for a moment and suggested, after being cooped up in the Jotunheim Research Institute for so long, you don't want to continue being confined in the devouring dimension, do you? If you wish, you can control your clone's movements outside, just don't draw the attention of other humans. That's great. Starfish was thrilled, immediately conveying his thoughts, but my split body needs to be isolated from the outside world. Otherwise, it will easily absorb the surrounding energy. Isolation. Nian pondered. Would a glass jar be okay? No problem, Stero's clone agreed readily. There's a glass jar of the right size in the kitchen. Diana's words implicitly acknowledged the presence of Stero, the new family member. Wait a minute. Nian suddenly realized that this would bring the current household composition to a Greek demigod, Diana's aunt. 2 ordinary humans, himself and little Wanda. 3 alien species, the devouring beast cub, Stero's clone, and the symbiote Venom. It seemed that the wholesale influx of extraordinary beings was increasingly deviating from his usual ordinary life. The corners of Nian's mouth twitched slightly. His family had more extraordinary people than many cities combined. Speaking of the symbiote venom, Nian's eyes flickered, and he suddenly pointed at Xiao Wang, smiling inexplicably. Venom, are you still pretending? Taking this opportunity, are you sure you don't want to come out and chat? Staro's clone narrowed his eyes and looked at Xiao Wang solemnly. I've been vaguely sensing a strange, evil spiritual fluctuation within me ever since. The demigod Diana's gaze also fell on Xiao Wang. Her hand, seemingly grasping a faintly shimmering golden rope, seemed to have been etched in her hand. A few seconds of silence followed. When did you discover this? A hoarse, sinister whisper echoed. A dark liquid overflowed from Xiao Wang's soft orange fur and coalesced into a mouth. As soon as it finished speaking, a golden lasso slid across from the side, tightly binding the symbiote's liquid form. Venom. Under the lasso of truth, you can't tell a false lie. Diana said softly, holding the lasso. My aunt is still as reliable as ever. Nian sighed secretly, looking at Venom who appeared nearby. When did you notice it? It should be when Master Ancient One hit that palm. Nian shrugged and said, at that time, your soul and Xiao Wang's soul were knocked out of the body. Although your soul continued to pretend to be dead at that time, the soul body that was completely motionless was too deliberate. It was from then on that I suspected that you had been pretending to be asleep. You should be waiting for me to enter the Trinity, and when I lose control, take the opportunity to seize the initiative of the Trinity, right? I just find it a little strange. When we were in the island country today, I was almost out of control, but you have been behaving yourself and not appearing. Why is that? Nian said here, and his curious eyes fell on the symbiote venom. The symbiote venom fell silent. It truly didn't want to reveal the specific reason, but under the influence of the lasso of truth, it was forced to speak hoarsely. That damned powerful bald woman was secretly threatening me, telling me not to pay any attention to you, or I'd be banished to some other dimension devoid of life. Nian was stunned. It was the Ancient One he'd met earlier. He hadn't just invited him to study at the temple, but had also helped him deal with a potential threat lurking nearby. The Sorcerer Supreme, what a good man. So, you want to leave here next? Nian asked the same question he'd asked Staro. Can I stay, too? The usually powerful and sinister symbiote venom asked weakly under the gaze of the demigods, Staro's clones, and the Devourer cubs. Unlike Staro's treatment, it felt like it would be hammered to death the next moment if it said it wanted to leave. Of course, Nian's lips curled up in triumph, revealing a devilish smile. But you have to pay the rent. The next morning. Monday. Clear skies. After having breakfast at home with Wanda, the Scarlet Maid, Nian shouldered his backpack and headed out. The modern streets were now clear of snow, and tender green shoots were sprouting from the park grass. Winter was almost over. Could spring be far behind? The white frost that had once frozen onto the wall melted a little, slightly revealing the plaque with Superman underneath. Nian paused, muttering to himself, you know Kryptonians too. Of course, Kryptonians are in the universe. An invisible thought hadn't yet finished spreading. Nian. A pleasant voice echoed, accompanied by the sound of footsteps approaching from behind. Nian turned and saw a girl with short, swaying golden hair. Gwen was wearing a dark blue long-sleeved shirt and a short dress that barely reached her knees. Her straight, slender legs were tucked into white socks, revealing a hint of her fair, translucent skin. Gwen, aren't you cold? Nian asked curiously, observing King Mai's outfit. Although the temperature outside in Washington has risen considerably, it's still the end of winter. Spiders aren't afraid of the cold, right? Chapter 103. Fortunately, it is not extraordinary. Hearing Nian's words, the smile on the short-haired blonde's pretty face vanished. She couldn't help but punch Nian on the shoulder, deliberately using much less force, even less than a typical girl her age. HMPH. Gwen, expressing her anger, continued forward, her black boots tapping, nimbly passing Nian, her entire body radiating youthful grace. Looking at the skirt swaying as she ran and leaped, the vibrant, long, fair legs beneath it, Nian suddenly recalled the exquisite touch he'd felt on the school bus before, even more vibrant, radiant, and smooth than it had appeared. Want some compensation? Nian asked instinctively, regretting the words as soon as they were spoken. Gwen, walking ahead, blushed a bit, a hint of heat emanating from her golden hair. Clearly, she, too, was recalling the incident on the bus, and even the usually intellectual girl struggled to maintain her composure. "You want me to bite you again, right?" Gwen gritted her teeth, glancing back at Xinian with disapproval. "Being bitten by a pretty spider-woman doesn't really matter," Xinian said, spreading his hands with rare tact. "I won't bite." "Don't make me sound so violent," Gwen spat. Even as she spoke, her pretty, petite face brightened from its gloom. So easy to coax. Xinian naturally didn't dare to voice his feelings. He glanced around, and many pedestrians gave the two of them strange looks. Xinian gestured, "Well, can we not talk about biting for now?" Gwen blushed and hesitated for a moment, then suddenly walked towards Xinian, forming a voice-transmitting microphone with her hands. She leaned close to his ear and said, "If you want to touch me, come to my house this weekend." This was a true brother. Xinian had to admit, at that moment, his heart was completely moved. But then his face turned bitter again. Xinian was afraid that if he really did that, a certain police officer would be unable to resist. On the way, Xinian and Gwen continued their journey to school. However, Xinian had something extra on him, which suddenly caught the attention of his childhood sweetheart, Gwen. "Xinian, what's that?" Gwen's puzzled gaze fell on Xinian's school bag. It was a small glass bottle hanging from the zipper, containing a single, pink, golf ball-sized jellyfish-like object. The pink object looked adorable, motionless within the gently swaying glass. "Oh, that's a small jar, it's a decoration," Xinian said casually. "Who's a decoration?" An invisible thought continued to echo in Xinian's mind. Meanwhile, in the deserted house, a slightly larger glass jar sat in the corner of the balcony. Inside, a palm-sized starfish lay, basking in the warm sunlight. Suddenly, its central, azure eye opened. Yes, the small, jellyfish-like object on Xinian's body, like an ornament, was actually a fragment of Staro's avatar, serving as its size and a platform for receiving his thoughts. Having been trapped in Jotunheim for so long, Staro insisted that Nian take his clone with him to see the city outside. The world is so big, he wanted to see it. Nian and Gwen entered the school side by side. Nian glanced around the vast campus. The teaching and office buildings had been renovated, and everywhere exuded a fresh, bright atmosphere. After the last lizard monster intrusion, the atmosphere inside the school was still somewhat unsettled. Furthermore, many instructors and professors had disappeared or resigned, leaving a huge gap in the school's faculty. So, the first class of the morning was as Nian had expected. Instructor Roth Harrington, with his muscular, somewhat macho demeanor, walked up to the podium, holding a water cup with a picture of a silver-haired goddess on it, and once again introduced the new assistant instructor. "Now, let us warmly welcome Miss Felicia, your assistant instructor." Instructor Roth's passionate words were met with enthusiastic applause from the class. A woman with unusual silver-white hair hurriedly stepped onto the podium. She was about 22 years old, dressed in a neat white long-sleeved shirt and black trousers. She wore low-heeled women's boots, revealing only a sliver of her snow-white ankle. A badge identifying her as an intern teaching assistant hung on her chest. Her features were delicate and soft, and her figure was tall and slender. Her appearance was surprisingly comparable to that of Natasha, the instructor who had only been there a few days. However, compared to Natasha's mature and charming demeanor, the new instructor, with her youthful appearance, seemed strangely unfamiliar and unnatural. Simply put, she looked more like a fair-skinned, long-legged older sister next door than an instructor. Under the gaze of her classmates, Felicia took a deep breath and said nervously, "Hello everyone. I'm Felicia Hardy. I'll be Mr. Roth's assistant, your deputy instructor. Please keep me company." "Hello, Miss Felicia." Many classmates shouted enthusiastically. Some of the more mischievous ones whistled, leaving Felicia at a loss. "Ha ha ha," Instructor Roth said with a hearty laugh, as if to help. "Instructor Felicia is still a student at a state university, just doing an internship here. I'm considered your senior, so please don't bully her." As Instructor Roth introduced them, Nian, who was in the audience, looked at the new instructor and suddenly lowered his voice. "Guan Luo, does she have any extraordinary abilities?" A mental thought quickly emanated from the jellyfish glass ornament hanging from his backpack under the table. "No, she's just an ordinary person." "Are you sure?" Nian confirmed again, also in light of the previous incident. "There's no mistake." She's just an ordinary human, Staro's clone, Tank Luo replied confidently. While Gwen could only rely on his spider sense, Staro could directly determine whether someone possessed supernatural abilities by examining their mental strength. At the height of Staro's power, he could even peer into someone's thoughts and feelings. That's good, Nian breathed a sigh of relief. His expectations for assistant instructors weren't high these days. As long as they weren't supernatural, it would be fine. After completing her self-introduction, Felicia stood quietly at the side of the classroom, diligently taking notes, like an ordinary intern teacher. Instructor Roth continued, by the way, the school has contacted a new professor, whose name seems to be Adrian Toombs. He's a renowned electrical engineer in New York City, and he'll be temporarily taking over your chemistry lab class. Nian listened and then stopped paying attention. For him, who wanted to study hard, as long as the professor didn't suddenly transform into a lizard monster, extend mechanical octopus claws from his back, or transform into a cannibalistic female leopard, it was fine. This is not too much to ask, right? Collect the recommendation votes and the last monthly votes of this month. Chapter 104 Steppenwolf, North Star. Somewhere on Earth, a vast, empty, abandoned factory building lies within. The bright midday sun barely penetrates. Dark and damp, an unknown evil grows within. Countless alien creatures, half a human's height, with black wings like dragonflies on their backs, nest within the building, resting and circling like nests, filling the air with a cacophony of sounds. Then, accompanied by a single, aged voice, the vast building quickly fell silent. Desed, I call upon you. It was a strange, powerful being, 2 or 3 meters tall. It wielded a razor-sharp axe in one hand, a pair of horns atop its head, a pair of sharp, imposing horns. Its entire body was covered in a suit of steel scale armor. The armor, shimmering against a cold metal, seemed to breathe on its own, constantly swirling and turning. Answer its call. Before a machine that tangled like millennia-old tree roots, a mysterious stone tablet bubbled upward like lava, melting and transforming into a mysterious being cloaked in a black-gray cloak. Steppenwolf, have you begun to conquer the world? The mysterious being known as Desed spoke calmly. Wielding a great axe, Steppenwolf nodded quickly and replied in a hoarse voice, yes, this world is falling apart. The rulers are barbaric species, and free will must be stripped away by us. Like other worlds, ultimate salvation lies in upholding a glorious faith, the greatest being in the universe, loyalty to him. Finally, Steppenwolf, only half visible from his steel scale armor, his stern, terrifying, and rough face subconsciously revealing a look of fanaticism and awe. Where is the mother box? Desed continued. Steppenwolf responded quickly, I have found one of the 3, the mother box that called me. The other 2 mother boxes are still dormant, and the demons have sensed their location and are lurking around the world looking for them. I will soon be able to gather the 3 mother boxes and unite them into Trinity. Steppenwolf. Desed, who appeared across a distant star field with special 3D virtual projection technology, looked at it with some regret and sadness. You could have sat beside the Dark Lord, but you were exiled because of your arrogance. Steppenwolf seemed to be unable to control his emotions anymore. He lowered the axe blade that was enough to easily kill the Amazons, and knelt down on the ground with his knees. Desed, I kneel before you, let me plead with him. After I deprive the world in his name, please let me go home. There is no Green Lantern Corps, no Kryptonians, and no binary captains here. Odin, who sits high in the realm of God, is old, and the old gods of the Earth world are no longer glorious. This world will eventually fall, just like the other worlds. For Darkseid. Night. After school, Nian returned home and curled up on the sofa to watch TV. A girl a few years younger than him bustled about the house. Master, how about some fruit first? Lift your feet, I need to mop up here. Dinner's on the way. Miss Diana just called and said she won't be home for dinner. It had to be said. As Nian sprawled on the sofa watching TV, his peripheral vision fell on the crimson figure, and he felt a pang of guilt, like he was recruiting child labor. Nian had tried to help Wanda before, but his maid had always rebuffed him. Well, it wasn't so much rejection as outright disdain. After all, little Wanda could clean, cook dinner, and chop fruit and wash clothes in the process, while he was only able to do half of everything and was completely useless. Ever since Wanda moved in, Nian felt that many of his skills were gradually deteriorating. Perhaps he really wouldn't be able to take care of himself without Wanda. Just then, he thought of this. Nian was startled. A small piece of metal had suddenly flown in from his balcony, just as night had fallen. Before the metal fragment even reached the sofa, Xiao Wang, who had been seemingly fast asleep on the sofa next to Nian, suddenly woke up and lunged forward, pinning the metal fragment to the floor. That thing came from the rooftop, and it even has a built-in mental isolation. What a strange and powerful ability. The starfish in the glass jar on the balcony opened its eyes and uttered a thought in some surprise. Xiao Wang, let me see it. Seeing that Xiao Wang was about to swallow the metal fragment, Nian quickly stood up from the sofa, lifted Xiao Wang up, and took the metal fragment from the cat's paw. He looked down. The words roof were engraved on the metal fragment. A figure flashed through Nian's mind, and he immediately grasped the metal fragment and said to little Wanda, who was in the kitchen, Wanda, I'm going out for a minute. Dinner will be ready soon. Where are you going? Wanda's voice sounded somewhat puzzled. Going downstairs to buy something, I'll be back soon. Nian said, changed his shoes at the door, hurriedly grabbed his keys and left the house. However, after entering the elevator, Nian pressed the up button directly, heading to the top floor. Pushing open the already unlocked iron door, he arrived at the rooftop of the residential building. Nian looked up and saw a girl leaning against a fence against the night breeze. She was wearing a tight black tracksuit, a white cap pressed against her green hair. Boss Polaris, why are you here? Nian smiled and walked over. I'm your boss. Do I need to notify you when I'm coming? The girl said proudly, turning around. Nian paused slightly. It was Luna before him. But this time, the girl wasn't wearing the mature smoky makeup. Beneath the brim of her cap, she revealed a perfectly fair face, equally delicate and doll-like, with features somewhat resembling Wanda's. What are you looking at? What's so good about it? Luna glared at Nian in disapproval. Why aren't you wearing makeup today? Nian asked bluntly, leaning against a nearby fence. No need for makeup when I see you. Luna replied defiantly. Nian suddenly understood. Luna's usual smoky makeup was meant to appear more mature, more easily intimidating her gang members. Sensing Nian's much gentler gaze, Luna crossed her arms and warned, don't touch my head. Otherwise, I'll be angry. Yes, Boss Polaris, Nian said with a smile. He looked at the green-haired girl before him, who was far more powerful and resilient than she appeared, and his heart was suddenly shaken. At this moment, the endless dark night enveloped the city, and on the rooftop, she was the most dazzling star. Chapter 105. It's so exciting, war is coming. On the rooftop, a black-haired boy and a green-haired girl stood together, leaning against a fence. The city's glittering neon lights and the dark night breeze shone upon them. I want to thank you. Polaris Lorna, holding onto the fence with both hands, stood tall, just at the same height as Nian. She looked out at the distant city and suddenly spoke in an unfamiliar tone. Thank me? Thank you for what? Nian asked, puzzled, as he looked at the girl's delicate and fair profile. Thank you for taking care of Wanda. Giving her a new home and not letting her stay alone in New York. Lorna whispered to this point, as if she had finally lost control. She said with some irritation, thank you for anything. It's too embarrassing. Just thank me directly. What do you need? Or, who do you want to teach a lesson to? I'll help you. Nian couldn't help but laugh. What are you laughing at? Lorna glared at him again. She felt that if Nian laughed at this time, she would look very silly. You don't have to thank me about Wanda. Looking back now, it's more like she's taken care of me than me. Nian shrugged, then asked curiously, why didn't you just take Wanda away that time? Lorna was silent for a moment, then said, that part of me isn't suitable for her. That part is suitable for you? At your age, you should be. Before Nian could finish his words, Lorna interrupted him coldly, saying, even my biological parents didn't care about me, so you have no right to care about me. Nian was silent. He had already vaguely guessed Lorna's life experience, which made him feel even more pity for this girl who was perhaps even younger than Wanda. Nian opened his mouth, then said firmly, how about I raise you? The green-haired girl next to him trembled slightly, then quickly regained her composure. Then she looked at him with disdain and said, forget it, it's more reasonable for me to raise you. Nian felt hit. Remember, I'm your boss. This will never change. The green-haired girl suddenly thrust her hands forward, her body ethereal and lifted slightly, as if dancing briefly in the night sky. Just then, a powerful gust of wind blew from outside, knocking her cap off her head and carrying her green hair with it. Following the girl's leaping figure, Nian's eyes flashed with astonishment. Under the clear, silvery moonlight, Luna's lustrous green hair danced wildly, making her look like a meteor streaking across the night sky, a moment of exquisite beauty. Little brother, Luna's emerald eyes narrowed slightly. She clasped her hands behind her back and approached Nian. She puffed out her somewhat youthful, flat chest, raised her chin with a proud and arrogant smile, and smirked at him with her pink tongue. Are you sure you don't want a reward? Nian's back was pressed against the rooftop railing, unable to retreat. Tisk, forget it. Lorna pouted. Before she could finish her words, Nian cupped the girl's face, which was so close to him, and quickly lowered his head, opening his mouth to hold a small piece of softness. Woo! Lorna, who had seemed so domineering a moment before, suddenly opened her eyes wide, and her body quickly softened like ice cream. Nian felt like he was tasting a candy with a filling, sweet and delicious, but the candy's surface had a faint smell of tobacco. At the same time, due to the physical contact and the medium, Nian's hair suddenly turned dark green. The boy and girl were like a positive and negative magnet, their bodies tightly hugging each other. Fireworks like green fluorescence emerged and converged around them, swirling like the brilliant star belts surrounding Gemini. After a long moment, Lorna took a step back, wiped the corner of her mouth with her hand, and gasped. I almost suffocated. Nian was speechless, realizing that the girl had been holding her breath. Little brother, I should go now. By the way, I'm still investigating the matter of Pete. Lorna waved her hand bluntly, and without waiting for Nian's response, she turned and left. Boss Polaris, be careful. Also, remember to stop smoking. Nian warned. I don't want you to care. Lorna turned around and glared at him angrily, then turned and left downstairs. Nian secretly opened the door and slipped in, but when he looked up, he found the Scarlet Maid standing in front of him, which almost scared him to death. Master, it's time for dinner. Hey, what's wrong with your hair? Wanda looked at Nian's hair curiously. Her master's hair would change color, and she was almost used to it. But, it always turned silver, why did it turn dark green this time? Eat dinner, don't worry about these details. Nian said with forced calmness. Wanda nodded, and did not continue to ask questions. Instead, she took off Nian's slippers and placed them on the carpet. Watching the blushing girl return to the living room, Nian breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't know why, but he suddenly felt like he'd been caught red-handed. And the woman was his wife's sister? This was too exciting, his heart couldn't take it. A week passed. During this week, Nian finally felt like he had returned to his normal life. Of course, he knew this rare normal life wouldn't last. After all, television and newspapers had been broadcasting a steady stream of news reports of people mysteriously disappearing. These missing people had various identities: teachers, shop assistants, professors, and even simple cleaners. The locations of their disappearances varied, too. Some disappeared in their homes, some on their way home, and some vanished in their laboratories. The local cameras were all broken, but they left behind signs of severe damage beyond human control. The city with the most missing people was Metropolis. This city, once the most protected by Superman, fearless of all crime, even major natural disasters. Nian knew it must be the work of the dark forces lurking on Earth from Apocalypse. So, lately, Aunt Diana has been increasingly busy. She even brought Guan Luo, who had been basking in the sun all day, with her, hoping to use his abilities to help locate the evil forces of Apocalypse. Although the actual war hasn't begun yet, Nian can clearly sense the undercurrent surging. The Justice League and Apocalypse have already begun a game of chess. The Justice League's goal is naturally to protect the remaining mother boxes and wipe out the Apocalypse forces hiding in the shadows of Earth. The Apocalypse force's goal is to gather the three mother boxes and combine them into Trinity. Therefore, if the war between the two sides is brought to light, it will mean a final showdown. Nian has clearly prepared to be Aunt Diana's final trump card. Dividing line. P.S. Due to various reasons, some chapters cannot be released. You can join the full subscription, there is a portal in the introduction, to participate in the plot discussion and read the uncut chapters. Chapter 106, Remarks on the Release. Yes, Tomorrow is September 1st, the first day of school for many students, and also the day my Marvel Supergirl friend hits the shelves. Thank you all for your support since the book's launch. While the performance at 100,000 words wasn't great, it's you who have helped this book make it to the front page and the Sanjiang forums. I plan to release 2 chapters tonight after midnight for everyone to try out, and I'll continue to add more chapters during the day depending on the situation. Let's start with the September bounty program. With a minimum of 2 chapters per day, I'll add 1 chapter for every 1,000 subscriptions, every Kidian.com member, and every 100 monthly votes. It can be said that a book's true starting point is after it's released. Subscriptions directly impact the author's income, and only when the author has financial security can the book's quantity and quality be guaranteed. I implore all readers who can afford it to continue to support this book with a legitimate subscription. First-time subscriptions are crucial, so if you don't have time to subscribe tomorrow, you can enable the book's automatic subscription feature in advance. Authentic supporters of this book can post comments and view character images. A VIP group for discussions, unedited chapters, and other purposes will be opened in the future. Everyone is welcome to discuss this book and Marvel DC with the author. Currently open, welcome to join the group. If you can't see or join, try the mobile version of Kidian. There's a transfer portal below the book's introduction. There's no point in saying more. Let's flip back. Let's continue our journey to build a girlfriend alliance. Chapter 107 My Schoolmate is a Superwoman. Please subscribe. 2012, 10 o'clock in the morning. Just 1 month had passed since Dacheo's death in battle. Spring was approaching, and everything was beginning to revive. New green buds were already sprouting from the trees and grass outside the campus, a sign of a rebirth. Nian was in class, listening to Instructor Roth's summary of the previous week. Assistant Instructor Felicia Hardy had already joined the class, quietly taking notes in the last chair. But then, Nian shuddered, quickly slipping his left hand from the table and hiding it beneath it. His eyes widened in shock, only to see a dazzling golden light emanate from his left wrist, hidden by his long sleeves. The protective silver bracelet was automatically issuing an emergency call. This was, Auntie is in danger. Nian's heart suddenly pounded violently, his nerves tense with unprecedented tension, and he instantly stood up from his chair. Huh? What happened? Faced with this sudden scene, the entire classroom was stunned, casting surprised glances at Nian. Nian, is there anything wrong? Instructor Roth asked curiously from the podium. In the back seat of the last row, Felicia's beautiful eyes also flickered with confusion. She naturally knew the black-haired Chinese boy, whose name was Nian Prince. She remembered Instructor Roth's high regard for him, but in the past week or two, she had come to think of him as just an average student who studied hard, had no particular specialties, and was a bit of a homebody. Nian remained silent, taking several deep breaths and forcing herself to calm down. Nian, are you okay? Gwen, the class monitor, had forgotten the rules and worriedly stood up from her seat and walked over. Come with me. Without hesitation, Nian grabbed Gwen's wrist and quickly pulled her out of the classroom. Inside, the 2 instructors and the remaining students stared blankly at the 2 men as they disappeared through the classroom door. At the corner of the stairs in the unmonitored classroom, Nian quickly pulled Gwen there, his hands resting on the wall. He spoke to the bewildered Gwen. Gwen, do you believe me? Need I say that? Gwen's childhood sweetheart's eyes were like sapphires, clear and resolute, their pupils a striking contrast to the dark-haired boy's face. Then lend me your power. Afterward, I'll take any compensation you need. Nian said quickly. As soon as he finished speaking, Nian's eyes suddenly widened as Gwen embraced him, something warm and soft touching his lips. And so, Nian instinctively reached in to obtain the medium, a slight tingling sensation like an electric shock emanating from the tip of his tongue. His highly adaptable genes seemed to be yearning for evolution at this moment. His long-sleeved shirt was lifted by his toned abdominal muscles, revealing the perfect curves of his muscles like an assembly line. A hypersensitive sense radiated outward 5 meters. Spider mode, success. Nian released Gwen, whose face flushed with shame and steam billowed from her head. Clearly, this time outside the school stairwell during the day was far more thrilling than the last time under the lab table. Gwen opened her mouth slightly. As if anticipating what she was about to say, Nian quickly spoke, help me with this school. Then, wait here for me. Gwen hesitated, but seeing Nian's unprecedented determination, she finally nodded. She looked at Nian and gritted her teeth, You'd better come back safely. You still owe me a lot of compensation. Of course, Nian nodded, then leaped over the banister and leaped 10 meters to the first floor. Nian knew full well that someone who could pose such a threat to even Aunt Diana was definitely not someone Gwen could handle. Of course, having an extraordinarily skilled helper would naturally increase their chances of victory in this uncertain battle. But Nian's selfishness kept Gwen from getting involved. At that moment, Nian suddenly realized that if it were Aunt Diana, she might not even fight to the bitter end, rather than pull out this ultimate trump card. Because in Diana's eyes, he wasn't a so-called trump card, but a family member she desperately wanted to protect. Leaving school, Nian slipped into a dark, deserted alley, wrapping a scarf around his face. With a flick of his wrist, a stream of white spider silk shot out, and his body immediately leaped high, soaring into the sky above the city. He didn't immediately rush in the direction of the artifact's strong resonance. Nian knew that relying solely on his spider physique wouldn't be enough. He needed at least the power of symbiote venom and the devourer beast, so he was now heading home at full speed. However, Nian also knew that the combined power of symbiote venom and the devourer beast king had already put him on the verge of losing control. Now, with the predator abilities of the spider mutation already in his possession, adding that extremely sinister trinity to the mix, not to mention whether he could control all these abilities, his temperament alone would likely undergo a drastic change. But Nian had no choice. After all, where could he find a transcendental being of the opposite sex with abilities even more powerful than his aunt's, without affecting his basic temperament? Polaris boss Lorna was one. But, let's not even mention that Nian didn't have her contact information. Even if he did, it would be too late to send her from New York. A strong wind howled in his face, and the streets on both sides quickly receded. Nian anxiously pondered a strategy. Just as he was soaring over a tall building, he raised his left wrist again, but this time, he missed the release of the spider silk, causing his body to plummet to the ground. Don't let me down at this critical moment, Nian said, as if to himself. He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again, much calmer. Come again. Just when Nian was about to raise his wrist again and shoot spider silk towards the tall building in front, a figure faster than a meteor fell straight down from the sky and caught up with Nian. Too fast, Nian's pupils contracted violently, and his spider sense barely sensed it, but his body still had no time to react. Snap! The extremely fast-flying being hugged Nian's body, and then raised the red cloak again and flew up, slowing down and landing on the rooftop of the tall building next to him and putting him down. Nian looked along the fluttering red cloak and recognized the identity of the person in front of him at a glance. But precisely because of this, he felt a little unbelievable. Senior Nian, are you okay? Kara Danvers blinked, turned her body slightly, and smiled at him. I said I would let you see my true appearance. Now, this is the true posture of my clan. Chapter 108 Take Off, Kryptonians. Subscribe. Nian was stunned. Wasn't that the girl who appeared, Kara Danvers, a year younger than him? Except, Kara Danvers was wearing the same Superman suit as Superman. The dark blue top clung to her well-developed figure, the S family emblem prominently emblazoned across her towering chest. Beneath it was a vibrant red knee-length skirt. Her legs were tightly wrapped in shiny black stockings, and her feet were clad in dark red combat boots. Senior Nian, what do you think of me like this? Supergirl winked playfully, her beautiful face even more gentle and confident than usual. Her dark golden hair was unrestrained, each strand gleaming like platinum in the sunlight, dancing effortlessly yet effortlessly in the strong wind. Like a unique young deity. Beautiful, Nian exclaimed heartily. Then, as if realizing something, he said, are you a Kryptonian? Yes, Kara Danvers nodded, a touch of sadness in her eyes. Superman is actually my cousin. He and I are the only two Kryptonians left. You're Superman's cousin. Nian felt a sense of refreshment at this relationship, but quickly realized now wasn't the time to discuss it. He glanced down at the gleaming gold and silver bracelets, then looked up at Supergirl and said solemnly, there's supposedly a battle going on in Metropolis right now, are you aware? Of course. I'm heading there to join the fight. You were right, now that Kal is gone, I should become Supergirl. Kara Danvers replied firmly. Nian didn't know what to say. He was just trying to comfort her, but he had no idea she was actually a Kryptonian. Supergirl continued, I started from home and passed over the school, then spotted you and Gwen at the corner of the stairs. A bit bold. That's because my powers require it, Xinian waved awkwardly. Then, solemnly and seriously, he said, please take me with you. My aunt is over there, and I want to join the fight. He expected Kara to refuse or hesitate. Unexpectedly, Supergirl Kara Danvers agreed immediately. Okay. Xinian was slightly stunned. But before that, you need this, right? Supergirl smiled faintly. Her feet suddenly floated off the ground, and her body suddenly flew towards Xinian, gently touching his lips with something soft. It was a kiss that was a little naive, a fleeting touch, but still spontaneous and unexpected. I'm not giving up yet, I'm just joining the fight. Supergirl Kara Danvers, her white blonde hair and red cape fluttering, said in a warm and confident voice, as if in announcement. Xinian could no longer hear her words. As he felt the girl's soft warmth between his lips, his body felt as if it had been blown apart from the inside out by a bolt of lightning. Genes more powerful than any previous mutations, or even Greek demigods, instantly took over his body. Normally, when Xinian possessed two abilities simultaneously, they would amplify and intensify each other, evolving into combined form. But now, with Xinian already possessing the spider power, a power infinitely more powerful had simply taken its place. As the dominant core of his physical abilities, the spider power had seemingly abdicated, willingly serving as a supporting function to help his body control this overpowering power. This was the power of Kryptonians. A supernatural physique, one of the finest on Earth, perhaps even in the entire universe. Superman mode. Upon first gaining his Kryptonian powers, Xinian's first feeling was that he was omnipotent, and indeed, he was. He could see the entire Washington, D.C., city at a glance. He could see through the skeletons of passers-by on the streets below, hear the engines of airplanes soaring across the sky at the far end of the city, and the ants crawling on rooftops not far away. He could clearly sense urban areas miles away. Xinian knew his omnipotence was a lie, but now he felt he could crush even God himself to the ground. Normally, with a Kryptonian's extraordinary physique, Xinian would have lost control and gone berserk the first time he mastered it. But now he also possessed spider powers. These spider powers, a supporting skill, seemed to form countless invisible threads within his body, helping Xinian control his Kryptonian power. Is it really possible? Even the physical abilities of our Kryptonians can be acquired this way. Supergirl Kara Danvers' eyes gleamed. Her first thought was, wouldn't this allow the Kryptonians to expand their population on Earth? Unaware of Supergirl Kara's thoughts, Xinian attempted to move his upper limbs. His shirt ripped apart, revealing his muscular upper body, as solid as steel. Senior Xinian, try this, Supergirl said, reaching out to grasp Xinian's hand. Xinian could clearly feel a powerful yet gentle invisible force enveloping him like glue. Xinian, realizing something, grasped the other woman's soft hand in return. A surge of energy emanated from his own body, blending seamlessly with the dense energy surrounding Supergirl. This is a bioforce field, Supergirl explained. It's like our own strength, a form of energy. Used properly, we can shatter an entire building with a single punch, or create a mere passageway through it. It can make the body as hard as steel or as pliable as an ordinary human. I understand. Let's head to the battlefield now, Xinian exhaled, and a chilling wind suddenly blew from the front. Then, let's take off. Supergirl Kara smiled, and her feet left the ground again, floating steadily on the rooftop half a meter above the ground. How can I fly? Xinian asked curiously. As long as you believe you can fly, you can fly. Supergirl said with a smile. Just like dolphins are born to swim in the sea, horses are born to walk on land. For Kryptonians on Earth, flying is an ability implanted in their blood. Imagination? I'm very good at this. Xinian muttered to himself. Then, the next moment, his body floated slightly like a balloon. Let's go. Supergirl said, holding his hand. Okay, let's go. Xinian took a deep breath, and his mind moved. As the air around them exploded, the two of them soared into the sky like two rockets, breaking the sound barrier at an altitude of 1,000 meters above the city, and flying towards the direction of Metropolis at high speed. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109 Superman's Nian. Please subscribe, 1,000 subscriptions for more. Ever since Superman's solo battle against the Kryptonian warship a year and a half ago, which brought him to fame and revealed the existence of a hidden god on Earth, countless scientists and researchers have become obsessed with studying and analyzing Superman's abilities. The most popular research topic isn't his Man of Steel, super flight, super strength, super speed, clairvoyance, thermal vision, or cold breath, but rather his bioforce field. So, what exactly is a bioforce field? Leading scientists have conducted countless analyses using the wreckage of Kryptonian warships, DNA traces left by Kryptonian enemies, and live footage of Superman's battles and actions. Ultimately, based on current scientific knowledge, they have come to a preliminary conclusion: Superman's original home planet, Krypton, has a gravity millions, even tens of millions, times that of Earth. The environment is so harsh that even light cannot escape Krypton's enclosed environment. Consequently, the Kryptonians who have been born and have lived on Krypton for so long have a special force field emanating from their cells from birth, distorting space and counteracting the immense force of gravity. This special force field emanating from Krypton's body can maintain the integrity of the fundamental particles of a body or object, and is also malleable, capable of detaching itself from its surroundings to cover other objects. Of course, this biological force field consumes a great deal of physical energy. Therefore, the Kryptonian physique continues to adapt and evolve, allowing cells to absorb energy to the maximum extent possible, especially solar energy. Therefore, this illogical alien race is itself one of the greatest wonders of the universe. If any of them were allowed to leave Krypton and arrive on a planet like Earth with abundant solar energy, they would manifest all sorts of invincible supernatural powers. Under the sun, thousands of meters above Washington, D.C., two figures soared through the clouds at breakneck speed. Like fighter jets, but smaller, like hawks, but even faster. They were, of course, Supergirl Kara Danvers and Nian, who had just gained superhuman powers. They were moving towards Metropolis. Nian gradually mastered his flight abilities, using a biofield, a physical, telekinetic force field, to shield the remaining trousers his shoes had shattered during takeoff. Otherwise, at his current breakneck speed, the wind would have instantly ripped him clean off. He would no longer be just Nian, but a truly freaked-out Superman. However, Nian's biofield wasn't executed with a right touch, so it extended towards Supergirl, who was nearby. Rather than simply covering her clothes, it aggressively attempted to peel off Supergirl's suit and wreak havoc within. Supergirl Kara Danvers, naturally aware of this, instinctively used her own biofield to block it. But perhaps because Nian's superhuman abilities were inherent to her, the biofield instinctively offered no resistance, instead welcoming Nian deeper, opening its defenses. At this moment, both Nian and Kara, still in mid-flight, froze. Nian felt as if, under his heightened senses, the bioforce field of a third, invisible hand enveloped an incredibly soft, radiant, petite body. A wonderful sensation emanated from deep within his brain. Kara, on the other hand, felt herself being touched all over at once. Nian's muscular, reinforced upper body was now bare, and due to his recent lack of proficiency in flying, one hand was still tightly clasped around her slender waist. Their bodies and bioforce fields were entangled in a fierce, entangled embrace. Even though Kara usually appeared proactive and uninhibited, she was still a young girl. A blush immediately crept across her face as she whispered, "Senior Nian, you're using too much force. Can you please let go?" "Oh, sorry." Nian finally realized what was happening and quickly released his right hand from the girl's waist, withdrawing the bioforce field deep within Kara's body. As a result, Nian accidentally withdrew his own bioforce field as well. In an instant, a fragment of tattered clothing fell from the clouds. Nian, Supergirl, in Metropolis, inside a multi-layered, blockaded building, a strangely shaped spaceship, obviously a product of alien technology, is quietly parked here. Scientists can only study the exterior of the spaceship at best. After all, with the current level of Earth technology, there is no way to crack the hatch access control of the spaceship, and it is even impossible to use unconventional means to forcibly break through the outer shell of the spaceship to enter the interior. However, at noon today, the spaceship was like welcoming its own child, jumping for joy. It intelligently and autonomously opened the hatch of the spaceship and lit up the lights inside one by one. The spaceship is welcoming the return of the daughter of Krypton. Supergirl Kara Danvers, wearing a female Superman battlesuit, and Nian, who was barely covering his body with a red cloak, walked in behind her. Although the intelligence system of the Kryptonian spaceship was surprised by Nian's identity, it also scanned his unique Kryptonian genes. "This is the ship that brought my cousin to Earth. I've also hibernated here before. There should be quite a few Superman suits here." Supergirl led Nian into the cabin. As she spoke, wardrobes opened on either side of the ship's corridor. Each wardrobe illuminated with a soft, non-glaring white light, and sets of men's Superman suits with built-in capes and different base colors floated out. Kara's face showed a nostalgic look, and she said softly, "These clothes are suitable for our clan and are also its symbols. There are ceremonial, diplomatic, and casual clothes. My cousin always seems to wear his favorite suit. None of these have been worn. You can choose one to wear." Nian took a quick look. The Superman suits were actually similar, and it was hard to tell which one was ceremonial or diplomatic. He thought to himself, just pick a color he liked. And so, Nian soon had an answer. Clothes, cape, boots, all with a dark undertone. As Nian donned the black Superman suit, it instantly conformed to his body, automatically adjusting to a snug, comfortable size that accentuated his figure like steel. "It suits you very well," Supergirl's eyes gleamed. She hadn't expected Nian to opt for Kryptonian home clothes, which softened her gaze, as if she were stepping into a domestic role. "This suit is very comfortable," Nian said, stretching his body slightly, figuring that even without using his biomechanics, he wouldn't damage the ultra-black suit made of some indeterminate material. At this moment, Supergirl Kara Danvers, as if sensing something, took a few steps forward, entering the somewhat chaotic interior of the spaceship's cabin. "How is this possible?" Supergirl shuddered, her heart awestruck. "Kara, what have you noticed?" Nian's dark cape fluttered slightly as he swiftly approached her. "There's a scattering bioforce field here. This familiar feeling." Supergirl's eyes were full of excitement as she blurted out, "How is this possible? My cousin was here just now." Chapter 110, Dacheo's Resurrection, 2000 Orders Plus. East of Metropolis, on Stryker Island, beside the Harbor District. This was the site of Superman and Doomsday's final battle. After that battle, Superman and Doomsday perished, and miles of the city, including the abandoned factory, were razed to the ground. Later, to commemorate the fallen superhero, Superman, a vast memorial plaza was rebuilt as the centerpiece of the battlefield. Crowds of citizens passed through the Superman Memorial Plaza almost daily, even though it lacks any buildings or signs, illuminated only by the sun's golden glow. In the center of the Superman Memorial Plaza stands a low platform, upon which 3 long black stone tablets record Superman's deeds. One afternoon, a dark-haired man, shirtless and wearing only black trousers, flew down from the sky onto the plaza's platform. He looked to be in his early 30s, his face as if carved by a knife and axe. He was tall and muscular, his upper body shaped like cast iron, his muscles flexing like an assembly line, a force of strength. The dark-haired man landed barefoot on the cool, flat-tiled floor, his eyes filled with confusion and bewilderment, as if he didn't even know why he'd come here. His gaze fell on the center of the low platform, where 3 long black stone tablets stood. A large S-shaped totem was carved into the ground, and next to it was a line of clear English inscription, "If you're looking for his monument, look around." The dark-haired man's eyes grew more puzzled, and his breathing quickened slightly. "Who is this he written above? And why did that peculiar totem on the ground look so familiar?" Before the dark-haired man could ponder further, behind him, in the square in front of the low platform, 4 figures, each with their own extraordinary abilities, arrived. Aquaman Arthur Curry, wielding a silver trident, leaped to the ground with astonishing bounds. Wonder Woman Diana Prince, draped in an armored battle skirt and carrying a sword and shield, plummeted from the sky. Cyborg Victor Stone, his body almost entirely mechanized and gleaming with crimson energy, soared down, and finally, Barry Allen, the Flash, appeared and stopped at breakneck speed, his body spun with silver lightning. If Nian were present, he would have known that this was exactly what my aunt had described as the standard membership of the Justice League superhero organization. Well, they were missing a key founder, who is on his way. "We really did it," Wonder Woman Diana exclaimed, gazing at the dark-haired man standing on the platform. That dark-haired man before her was none other than the deceased superhero, the god of men, Superman, Kal-El. However, Superman Kal's eyes narrowed slightly, a look of confusion and wariness as he gazed at the 4 Justice League members. Something was amiss. Wonder Woman and the other 4 on the scene sensed this. "He's scanning us." Cyborg's left eye flashed an electronic red light, and he couldn't help but speak nervously. "No way. What's going on?" Aquaman and the Flash subconsciously tensed. He's confused and doesn't know who he is. Wonder Woman suddenly realized that the resurrected Superman Kal-El wasn't complete, at least there were some issues with his memory. At this moment, Cyborg's mechanical body twisted and twitched slightly. His mechanical body, rebuilt by the Mother Box, was instinctively afraid of the powerful Kryptonian before him due to the advanced technology of Apocalypse. He took a passive defensive action. His mechanical left arm raised forward uncontrollably, and the arm switched to attack mode, launching a small missile. Boom! Superman Kal naturally dodged the missile with ease, and the missile missed, shattering a black stone tablet behind him. "It's broken." The faces of the Justice League members changed. Just as they had expected. Due to Cyborg's stress defense, Superman Kal looked at the 4 people again, and the confusion in his eyes turned to hostility. The strongest being, supposedly resurrected as a savior, had now become his enemy. Horizontal ellipsis. Half a minute later. The center of the Superman Memorial Plaza lay in shambles, the stone tablets completely destroyed, the ground riddled with potholes and dents. The Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg lay in separate locations. It wasn't that they, possessing extraordinary powers, were weak. Rather, their opponent, Superman Kal, was simply not on their level. Even with their combined might, they were knocked to the ground in less than a minute, like adults bullying children. Of course, being comparable to children was already a good thing. Ordinary humans were as weak as ants to him. Snap! Superman Kal's eyes still tinged with a red glow of his heat. He confronted Wonder Woman, the only one standing, and, grasping her suit strap with one hand, slammed his sword directly into hers. With a clang, the artifact, the Starlight Crown, adorned Wonder Woman's forehead, withstood the blow. "Kal-El, wake up!" Wonder Woman declared, retaliating with a powerful blow to her forehead, causing Superman Kal's head to tilt back slightly. This was the most significant blow the 4 Justice League members had inflicted so far. This single blow seemed to have completely infuriated Superman Kal, and a powerful, almost physical, pressure emanated from his body. Whoosh! Superman Kal's body suddenly rose upward, gazing down coldly at Wonder Woman from above. He leaned back briefly to gather strength, then slammed into Wonder Woman once again. The sound barrier was broken. Just as Superman Kal's forehead was about to strike her, Wonder Woman opened her beautiful blue eyes wide, only to see a black figure plummet from the sky, landing directly in front of her. The ground beneath them cracked and shattered under their feet. His black cape fluttered from behind him, and he raised a hand, barely blocking Superman Kal's powerful blow with the back of his hand. Bang! The mere collision of foreheads and hands caused the air to crack, unable to withstand the impact. A shockwave radiated from the point of contact. How is this possible? Aquaman, the Flash, Cyborg, and the others lying on the ground stared with wide eyes in bewilderment at the being who had appeared and immediately taken Superman Kal's attack. Superman Kal, floating in front, also showed a look of obvious surprise. It was revealed to be a mysterious young man in a black Superman suit. He stood just over 1.8 meters tall, with a delicate and handsome face. His body was also as solid as if forged from steel, his suit revealing the curves of his muscles, a powerful aesthetic. His lush black hair flew wildly. "You are..." Wonder Woman's eyes flashed with a strange light as she took in the profile of the mysterious young man. Although the man before her seemed several years older, having entered adulthood prematurely, his appearance was more resolute and sunny than before. His physique, enhanced by his dual physical abilities, was tall and muscular, his figure perfectly proportioned like a golden ratio. His overpowering aura was also profoundly out of character. Yet, she immediately recognized the mysterious young man in the super black battlesuit. Furthermore, the bracelet he wore on his wrist beneath the super black suit echoed the protective silver bracelet on his right hand. It was Nian. No. A more accurate description would be, Black Super Nian. Chapter 111 Black Zhao Nian and Blackened Zhao. Superman Memorial Plaza, on the field. "Are you not too late, Ant?" Nian took a blow from Superman Kal, turned around, and winked at Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman Diana Prince looked at Nian, lost for words. Finally, with a hint of resignation and a raised lip, she whispered, "You didn't study properly, but came here anyway. Of course, don't even think about abandoning me." Nian smiled. He knew that in his aunt's eyes, he was probably a child who would never grow up, someone she wanted to protect. But if Nian had the choice 1,000 times, he would still come here regardless. Not to protect the world, but to protect one person, just as that person had protected him for over a decade. For you, 1,000 times over. Whoosh! At the same time, Kara Danvers, clad in a blue and red Superman costume, flew down beside Nian. The gust of wind carrying her lifted the gravel and dust from the ground. Supergirl gazed at Superman, floating low in the sky, her eyes gleaming with excitement as she called out, "Kal, is that you?" Kal-El's sturdy face paled. He glanced at Supergirl, then returned his gaze to Nian, who had blocked his attack. His eyes instantly glowed red like metal forged in a furnace. His intentions were clear. "Kara, get them out of here." Nian, clad in a black Superman suit, declared decisively. "Okay." Supergirl knew she couldn't attack her cousin, but she had no idea what his condition was. She felt caught in a dilemma, unsure what to do. Hearing Nian's words, she instinctively followed his lead. Supergirl suddenly moved, flying to the side at a speed too fast for human vision to capture. She lifted the prone Aquaman and Cyborg, one in each hand, and flew away from the center of the battle. The Flash, however, was still quite swift. "Hey, put me down now. It's not like I can't fight." Aquaman Arthur, a burly, bearded man, felt humiliated to be carried off the battlefield by Kara. But before he could finish his words, he saw Superman's eyes blazing with heat rays in the square below. The mysterious young man in the black suit standing in front of him also had crimson eyes, emitting identical laser-like heat beams. Superman Black Nian and Superman Carl simply locked eyes. 4 materialized red lasers collided fiercely. A crackle. The blinding red light and the sudden surge in temperature made Aquaman Arthur Curry, 20 or 30 meters in the air, feel like a fish caught in the sun on land. It was only then that Aquaman suddenly realized that Superman hadn't really attacked yet. A crackle. Superman Black Nian stood before Wonder Woman, his eyes glowing with a searing crimson heat beam, locking glare with the pseudo-black Superman's. The two sides engaged in a volley of energy, their gazes surging for 10 seconds. Their heat visions clashed in a stalemate, but ultimately, Superman's prevailed. Clearly, even among Kryptonians, there were differences in physical strength and abilities. And Superman Kal-El was undoubtedly the strongest of the Kryptonian race. His own heat vision, suppressed to the point of near invisibility, Nian abruptly deflected the opponents to the left, glancing past his shoulder and sweeping sideways, carving 2 deep trenches across the open square. Blazing, scorching flames pierced through the solid ground, melting it into molten lava. Nian took a deep breath and launched a powerful punch forward. The air in front of him exploded, and his bio-force field blasted forward with terrifying Kryptonian force. Bang! Superman, struck in the chest by this blow, was sent flying backward, his body slamming into a low platform at high speed, completely shattering the previously shattered black stone tablet. However, less than a tenth of a second after being sent flying, before the debris could even begin to fly, a deafening sonic boom echoed from the ground, and Superman emerged unscathed from the ground he had crashed into. His clenched fists thrust forward like a human missile, he slammed into Nian's body. Wonder Woman, realizing that remaining behind Nian would affect him, withdrew from the fray. Nian reacted quickly, raising his arms and crossing them in front of him. The moment he completed the move, a pair of steel-forged fists swooped down like a meteorite, impacting his arms with immense force. Boom! Another surge of powerful wind and air surges erupted, and several members of the Justice League, 50 meters away, instinctively shielded themselves with their palms. Nian gritted his teeth, his perfectly muscled arms trembling violently as he barely withstood Superman's blow, powerful enough to pierce a mountain or a building. But even though he held on, the ground beneath him couldn't bear the weight and collapsed in a massive swath. Black Superman's Nian simply soared into the sky above the square, prompting the darkened Superman to pursue him. The two continued their close combat 100 meters above the city. And so, when Batman, clutching a glass jar containing a strange starfish, belatedly arrived at the Superman Memorial, he saw the two engaged in a terrifying aerial battle, each clash creating sonic booms, hurricane-force winds, and other terrifying sights. Can someone tell me what the hell is going on? Even someone as clever as Batman Wayne Bruce was baffled and stunned by this scene. No way, 2 Kryptonians? No, 3. Staros cloned within the jar. Kinro widened his single eye shock. It suddenly realized that Earth was more dangerous than it had imagined, far more perilous than any region of space it had ever traversed. The aerial battle didn't last long. Another blow unleashed a massive hurricane, like nature itself. A figure plummeted from the sky, crashing into the center of the square, creating a crater 3 meters deep and 10 meters in radius. Nian, panting heavily, struggled to his feet. In reality, possessing both spider and Kryptonian physiques, his overall power was slightly weaker than Supergirl's. After all, while the super spider genes and abilities within him assisted him in perfectly controlling his superhuman abilities, they also inevitably suppressed a small portion of his strength. Of course, if Nian had gained such immense Kryptonian power without the super spider abilities, he would likely lose control and explode the entire square. So, while his physical strength was somewhat weaker, it was the perfect, unfettered control he possessed. This minor drawback wouldn't have been a problem against other opponents, but against Superman, the most powerful Kryptonian, it was undoubtedly exposed. Before Nian could even catch his breath, Superman swooped down again, like a god bathed in sunlight. Stop. Supergirl was about to step forward to stop him, but a tall figure rushed forward before her. Wonder Woman, wielding a golden lasso, rushed to Nian's side and raised her right hand, adorned with a protective silver bracelet. Black Superman Nian instantly understood her intention and raised his left arm without hesitation. Hidden beneath the arm of Superman's black suit was a protective silver bracelet as well. At that moment, the two of them, each holding a protective silver bracelet, collided and matched. Buzz! The paired protective silver bracelets merged into one, instantly emitting the joyous sound of metallic artifacts clashing and unleashing a powerful surge of divine power. The diving Superman was tumbled and flung over 10 meters away. You. Nian's words abruptly stopped. But just as the black cape behind him rose high, obscuring everyone's view, Wonder Woman quickly approached and kissed him passionately on the lips. So many monthly tickets and rewards, thank you all for your first order. Starting tomorrow, I will add a separate chapter entitled Thanks for the Book Friends Who Are the Helmsman and Above, and the extra chapters for the monthly tickets will also be sent as soon as possible. Chapter 112 I am the only one in heaven and earth. The kiss was quick and fleeting, yet it held a burning passion within. Before the black cape covering them both fell, Wonder Woman withdrew her sensual lips and swiftly stomped backwards out of the pit. However, before she departed, Wonder Woman left Nian with another of her precious artifacts, the lasso of truth. Thank you, Auntie. Above the pit, the corners of Nian's mouth curled up slightly, the delicate scent of violet still lingering on his lips. A drop of medium flowed down his tongue and was absorbed into his body. Heterosexual contact, medium absorption. Conditions met. This was the third time Nian's master of the familiarity had been triggered today. Boom, boom, boom. Nian once again heard the drumming of his heart, but this time it was even more powerful, clear, and inspiring. He closed his eyes. It was as if he could see 50,000 years ago, many centuries ago, atop Mount Olympus, towering mighty gods of old, their mighty power intertwined in a flash of lightning that shone into the depths of the dark universe. He pricked up his ears. He seemed to hear, from the original side of Krypton, billions of light years away, the trembling cries of the Kryptonians, unwilling to be annihilated, finally placing all their precious hopes on their two children. Love and strength. The genetic powers of the Greek old gods and the Kryptonians, the two most powerful races on Earth and Krypton, now converged in an unprecedented manner within the human teenager. These two distinct powers, once determined to compete for supremacy, were then aided by the super spider power, forming countless invisible threads within his body, as if the two isolated and invincible powers were gradually pulled together and merged into one. The power of the old gods and the power of Krypton began to strengthen each other, approaching each race's own miniature paradise. Nian opened his eyes, his pupils turning golden, as if blazing with ancient golden flames. His once short, jet-black hair began to grow at a visible rate, turning a silver-white hue. Each strand exuded the embodiment of immense divine power, cascading casually across his shoulders and lower back. The Superman uniform, draped over Nian's muscular figure, seemed coated in a white film of divine power. Furthermore, Around Nian's figure, his dark cape flowing gracefully, bolts of divine lightning continuously erupted, like silver-white thunderbolts piercing the air. His very existence constantly manifested its divine might. Whoosh! The lasso of truth left by Wonder Woman suddenly moved on its own, floating through the air like a golden dragon. It quickly arrived behind Nian's head, spinning into a wheel and forming a golden halo. Whoosh! Whoosh! An unprecedentedly powerful aura rose from the young man, ruffling the hair and sleeves of those dozens of meters away. This was the true form of Nian, possessing the powers of the super spider, the old gods, and the Kryptonian physique, the super deified Nian. What's that? The Justice League members outside the battle, as well as Superwoman in the air, all opened their eyes wide in shock. The Flash instinctively felt that the electric light radiating around the young man in the super black suit was similar to the light he experienced when using the Speed Force, except that it only occurred when he needed to run at the speed of light, while the mysterious young man simply stood still. Cyborg's mechanical body suddenly trembled violently, and the red light from his chest and left eye faded. Aquaman, standing nearby, quickly supported Cyborg and asked, "Are you okay?" He was genuinely afraid. Cyborg, using his passive defense mechanism, launched another missile. "I'm fine." Cyborg took a deep breath, as if he knew what Aquaman was thinking. He looked at the young man on the field and said bitterly, "Don't worry, the defense mechanisms in my body have all been automatically shut down." He said in fear, "Do you know? Even when facing Superman just now, my mechanical body reshaped by Apocalypse technology only attacked and defended itself out of instinct. But now, the defense mechanism dares not even make a sound. It's not just fear. The Apocalypse technology in my body judges that the existence in front of us cannot be resisted, so there is no need for defense." Aquaman was silent. His body and mind were in shock now. The blood of the Atlantis Emperor seemed to be trembling, wanting to surrender. "Diana, can you tell me, what did you do just now?" Batman held Tankard in one hand and asked Wonder Woman, who had just retreated from the battle, solemnly. Wonder Woman never took her eyes off the young man, revealing a look even more confident than her own. "Just watch carefully. Everything is almost over." "This feeling is truly amazing," the aura-filled, super deified Nian muttered to himself, glancing down at his divinely coated palm. When he first gained the power of Krypton, he had been so powerful he felt omnipotent. Now, it seemed that omnipotence was no illusion. Another sonic boom echoed from the sky. Superman Carl swooped down at breakneck speed, closing in on Nian's head in a flash, unleashing a Superman punch that shattered the air. The next scene stunned everyone in the arena. The mysterious young man, still looking down at his right palm, had unknowingly raised his left hand, firmly blocking Superman's fist with it. A punch powerful enough to collapse a mountain or a building was instantly neutralized. And the ground beneath Nian was intact. It was a bioforce field, encompassing the entire square. Superman was also stunned. "Superman, haven't you regained your memory yet? I'll let you clear your head a little," the super deified Nian said in a young voice. He clenched the 5 fingers of his left hand, tightly grasping Superman's fist, and then swung it upward with all his might. A fierce hurricane erupted, and Superman was instantly hurled into the azure sky by Nian. A white cloud, hovering and pausing over the square, suddenly rips open a huge hole in its center, and a brilliant beam of golden sunlight fell down upon Nian. Superman continued to ascend without slowing, thousands of meters, 10,000 meters, and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the horizon. "Carl." Supergirl panicked at this. "Don't worry, he'll be fine," the super deified Nian said in a young voice. The next moment, his body vanished from the square, leaving only a radiant white wave of air in his wake. At the same moment, the white clouds, punctured by a hole in the sky, completely dissipated. In less than a second, the transcendently deified Nian arrived in the dark and silent outer space of Earth, his dark cape fluttering. A golden lasso, forming a golden halo, seemed to be fixed behind his head. Under the direct sunlight, Nian's long silver hair and the arc of divine power radiating from his body glowed with a golden sheen. The young man now resembled a true mortal god. Behind him, Earth revealed its true form, a spherical azure globe. Chapter 113 Battle on the Moon. In the silent, vast expanse of outer space, a pair of crimson gold eyes seemed to blaze. Long silver white hair, brimming with divine light, and a dark cape fluttered wildly. Lightning flashed across the space around him. The super deified Nian stood motionless in the universe, the lasso of truth, a divine artifact transformed into a golden halo, following closely behind him. As Nian appeared in outer space, a figure flashed past him at breakneck speed in the silent region of space, closing in behind him in an instant. Superman Kal-El, his sturdy steel body bare, wearing only the black pants he wore for his burial. Bathed in the direct sunlight, as if reborn from the ashes, he soared to Nian's side with a fierce momentum, striking down with a fist faster and more powerful than a missile. The super deified Nian seemed oblivious to this, standing motionless above the universe. Clang, a sound like striking metal traveled through his arm. Superman's pupils constricted sharply as his fist, before it could strike the young man, was blocked by a golden halo hovering behind him. The halo appeared to be a simple, luminous, decorative ring, but within it seemed to be storing the immense energy emanating from hair. Superman's fist, thrust into the very center of the golden halo, could not penetrate even an inch. Blocked by an invisible barrier, ripples of divine power rippled from the point of contact. These golden ripples of divine power rippled outward, echoing thousands of meters across the dark universe. Superman's body trembled, his eyes filled with bewilderment. This golden halo not only contained the vast divine energy of the old gods, but was also coated with a kryptonium bioforce field that was practically fused with divine power. Could a bioforce field be used like this? No, this was overflowing, wasn't it? And so, Superman felt his clenched right hand tremble violently, blocked and repelled by the divine energy and bioforce field. Before Superman could land his second punch, the divine figure of Nian flashed in front of him, seemingly swapping places with Superman and appearing close behind him. Without resorting to any fancy tricks, Nian delivered a simple, direct kick, sending Superman, still swinging, flying backwards, and in that instant, there was no sound. Superman's muscular back arched sharply under the unimaginably powerful impact and inertia, and he continued to fly backwards into space beyond Earth. On the way, he accidentally scraped against a satellite bearing the Wayne Industries logo, which happened to be orbiting nearby. The satellite instantly shattered like a toy, exploding into a brilliant orange fireball. Nian blinked, pretending not to notice, and then continued chasing Superman, his entire body streaking through the sky like a daytime meteor. Even the Justice League members, now perched on the Memorial Plaza, could see a single point of white, as dazzling as a star against the azure sky. At this moment, a white-collar lady, dressed neatly in a white shirt and black trousers, resembling an intellectual journalist, hurried to the Memorial Plaza. Observing the familiar figures of heroes and the devastated, shattered ground, she asked with a mixture of surprise and nervousness, "Clark's back to life? Is this true?" "Lois, it's true." Supergirl Kara Danvers quickly landed beside the white-collar lady and addressed Lois, her younger sister. "Where is he now?" Lois asked hurriedly. Supergirl pointed upwards and hesitantly replied, "They should be on the moon." Then, Supergirl softly reassured her, "Don't worry, that person's here. Carl'll be fine." "That person?" Lois repeated, doubtful, then raised her head to gaze upwards. At this moment, in a region of outer space not far from Earth, Nian quickly caught up with the still-flying Superman. Seeing he was about to collide with a space station again, he simply followed up with another kick, sending Superman flying towards the other side of space. There, a grayish-white planet adjacent to Earth stood. The moon. Superman slammed into the moon like a human-sized meteorite, his body instantly burying itself deep into the Earth. The aftermath of the impact sent the soil surging outward, creating a massive man-made impact crater with a radius of a mile. Superman Carl held his breath as he climbed from the center of the crater, just as he had seen Nian slammed into the Superman Memorial Plaza. It must be said that Nian still held a grudge. However, he never waited for 10 years or a year, he returned the favor that very day. As Superman rose, he looked up at the starry sky, his eyes crimson as he shot 2 scorching rays upward. His heat vision stretched to the darkness 2,000 or 3,000 meters away. Until, from the darkness of lunar outer space, 2 crimson rays, faintly tinged with lightning, descended. Like spears of judgment hurled down by the gods, their electric heat vision pierced everything, including Superman's own heat vision. Who glared at whom? A figure as bright as daylight descended as the electric heat vision descended. Superman instinctively raised his hands and crossed them over his head, landing one foot squarely on the spot where his arms crossed. Suddenly, Superman's towering form sank more than half into the lunar soil, and the massive man-made impact crater he was in expanded exponentially, creating a dust storm that spread for miles. This was a battle on the moon, some 400,000 kilometers from Earth. Horizontal ellipsis. At that moment, beside a research spacecraft docked on the moon, an astronaut in bulky clothing was collecting soil and surveying the terrain. He noticed the unusual movement of the wind and sand behind him and turned to see two human figures engaged in a fierce battle in the distance, effortlessly creating lunar dust storms and craters. Oh, my God! The astronaut's eyes widened in shock, and he flopped to the ground, nearly losing his soul. It wasn't just shock and awe. To him, the battle unfolding before his eyes was nothing more than two godlike beings, powerful as gods. He was blasted back for the umpteenth time. Superman Kal-El felt a pang of discontent. In truth, he had been somewhat awakened by the shock earlier, vaguely remembering his identity and memories. However, he sensed a connection between the young man and his cousin, and his Kryptonian physique piqued his curiosity, so he decided to test the waters. He hadn't expected the reversal to come so suddenly. Previously, Superman had thought he could still hold the young man in check, but after he changed his stance, he was relentlessly pinned down. The current suppression far surpassed that of General Zod, the former leader of the Kryptonian warship. Superman was now significantly stronger than he had been back then, yet he was still completely defeated by the mysterious young man. Now, Superman, the god of the world, wanted to express his sobriety and ask for a temporary truce, but being on the moon, he couldn't make any sound. This was a bit awkward. Ability strength, super deified Nian, prerequisite, first obtain spider powers, big super, black super Nian equals superwoman, spider Nian, suitable for stacking other supernatural powers, and not easily losing control. Chapter 114, Unsolvable Super Deification Nian, 3,000 words. On the moon. A powerful shockwave materialized, and a figure flew backward, skimming the lunar surface and hurling itself over 10 miles away, stirring up a dramatic dust storm in both directions. The astronaut standing nearby stood transfixed, witnessing this divine battle. Superman Kal-El, severely deprived of oxygen, felt his brain groggy, and he shook his head involuntarily. When he looked forward again, where he had just fought, was the figure of the super deified Nian nowhere to be seen. A sharp sense of danger shot through the back of Superman's head, and the defensive biofield expanding around his body was forcefully shattered. Floating low in the moon sky, Superman turned and saw the silver-haired young man standing behind him. A golden lasso, like a dragon, pierced the air, its ropes whirling with white lightning. It quickly passed through his naked torso, spinning rapidly several times, binding his hands and feet. The divine lasso, gleaming with golden light and electric energy, not only contained divine power to suppress the body but also was coated with a strong bioforce field, making the already sturdy rope even more secure. This was truly over. The end of the crushing defeat. For some reason, Superman Kal-El felt a sense of relief at that moment. The deified Nian extended his right index and middle fingers, gripping the other end of the lasso of truth, and gently tapped it between Superman's eyebrows. Without uttering a single word, Nian, through the lasso of truth, transmitted his understanding of Superman's identity, the events surrounding his and Doomsday's deaths, and the changes that had occurred in the world since Superman's death. A moment of confusion and daze flashed across Superman's eyes, but then clarity returned completely, the last missing piece of the mental puzzle complete. All of this was complete. Nian didn't simply bundle Superman back to Earth. Instead, he respectfully untied the lasso of truth, allowing it to reappear on its own, transforming into a halo behind his head. Under the immense power of the super deified Nian, akin to a peak god, the divine artifact seemed to awaken, becoming even more spiritual and powerful than before. Nian gestured toward the distant Earth, and Superman nodded gently, refraining from attacking Nian. The two seemed to have known each other for a long time, their recent battle akin to a profound rapport. And so, before the nearby astronauts nearly fainted from shock, Nian and Superman, one in front and one behind, flew away from the moon, now teeming with new craters and abysses. Earth, Metropolis, Stryker Island. Above the Superman Memorial Plaza, Nian, his own light pollution effects, and Superman, now regaining consciousness, returned. Reporter Lois, with a ring on her ring finger, quickly stepped forward and threw herself into Superman's arms, who welcomed her with open arms and a knowing smile. The super deified Nian landed nimbly on the plaza, exchanging glances with Wonder Woman and Supergirl. Everything was said without words. "Tell me, what's the situation?" Nian spoke with a godlike presence, his gentle, steady voice imbued with divine authority. He naturally wouldn't waste the opportunity presented by his current state of superposition, quickly getting down to business, intent on resolving any remaining concerns. Wonder Woman Diana understood his meaning and quickly replied, "The situation is very grim. All 3 mother boxes have been taken by Steppenwolf of Apocalypse." "Steppenwolf, where's he?" Nian continued, his eyes flashing with terrifying lightning, as if he had pronounced the death of a certain being. "I don't know." Wonder Woman shook her head and said solemnly, "After we used the last mother box to resurrect Superman, Steppenwolf took advantage of the chaos and stole it. He should have returned to his alien base somewhere on Earth." "I think I have a way to find it," Cyborg said, suddenly flying back onto the square. "My father finally heated up the 3rd mother box and marked it. A scan and investigation should reveal the location of Apocalypse's base, but it will take time." Batman, holding Cannonball, stepped forward, feeling he had finally entered his area of expertise. He quickly joined the conversation. "It can be operated in my Batcave." "So, let's go back to the Batcave now?" the Flash asked curiously. At this moment, all the members of the Justice League, including Superman, gathered for the first time, turned their gazes to the mysterious young man on the field. Although Batman was the main founder of the Justice League and was quite intelligent and wise, the entire Justice League was far less reliable than the mysterious young man at the moment. Even if the young man had only been active for less than 10 minutes, it was enough to convince the superheroes, who all had their own pride and abilities. "No need. Wait a moment." The super deified Nian shook his head, throwing back these words before soaring straight into the sky. At such a breakneck speed, even the sonic boom was significantly delayed. In an instant, Nian reached Earth's near space. He gazed down at the universe, where a beautiful, ring-shaped, azure planet appeared. With his back to the sun, the super deified Nian, standing at the edge of space, spread his arms. From his steel body, clad in a super black battlesuit, streams of white, like spider silk and tiny lightning bolts, suddenly emanated from his steel body. Like a miniature sun, these streams of white light, centered around Nian, numbered in the tens of thousands, continuously overflowing, fragmenting and dispersing, raining down upon the earth below. From another angle, it looked as if Nian had woven a vast, invisible spiderweb, enveloping the earth beneath him. Day or night, at this moment, people around the world looked up and saw countless streams of white light streaking across the sky, like shooting stars. SHIELD headquarters. Director Nick Fury and Assistant Agent Hill stood at the French windows on the top floor, watching as countless streaks of light streaked across the sky. One of them fell into the SHIELD building, dispersing into a white fluorescent light that melted into the air. At Nian's home, little Wanda, returning home to find no one around, walked out onto the balcony, looking somewhat dejected. She noticed the streaks of daylight streaking across the sky, and as if sensing something, she stretched out her hand. A streak of white light suddenly fell from it, landing in her fair palm and dissolving. "So warm," Wanda muttered to herself, a bright smile breaking across her doll-like face. Inside the high school building in Washington, D.C., Assistant Instructor Felicia Hardy, off-duty, passed through the hallway carrying books. She was surprised to find a single blonde girl quietly sitting in her seat in the classroom, long since deserted. It was the class president, Gwen Stacy. The blonde girl, Gwen, kept glancing outside the classroom, as if waiting for something. Felicia was about to knock on the door and enter when a streak of white light fell from the windowsill into the classroom. Gwen instinctively reached out, and the light gently landed on her hand. In New York, at a manor, a dozen gang members jumped in surprise. It was their boss, Lorna, staring up at the sky. Her emerald eyes reflected the white meteors. As one of the white streaks, seemingly possessing a sense of consciousness, spread nearby, she suddenly cursed, "You said I was the brightest North Star in the night sky, but you're the sun." As expected, men's words are always lies. The offended male gang members trembled, wondering who had offended this green-haired Lolita boss again. Near the Himalayas, Kamartaj, a holy land. Supreme Mage Mage Mordo cried out in shock, seeing the streak of white light that had barely slipped through the mage's barrier. Ignore it. Suddenly, a bald woman appeared beside Master Mordo, hands behind her back, and said calmly. In outer space, after the super deified Nian completed this act, the divine light emanating from him dimmed considerably. Even though he had consumed a vast amount of energy, and that was even with the continued assistance of his black supersuit to enhance his solar absorption efficiency. Of course, the effect was significant. Xinian's mind was suddenly flooded with a vast amount of information from all over Earth. Even a fraction of this information would be enough to completely paralyze any ordinary human on Earth. Thanks to Xinian's equally enhanced brain, it was able to process it properly. After processing a considerable amount of information, Xinian located the location of what was highly suspected to be the Apocalypse base. In fact, he also hoped to seize the opportunity to locate the missing Pete. Unfortunately, finding a single person on Earth was still too difficult, unlike the obvious targets of the Apocalypse hidden base. Whoosh, Xinian plummeted downward, returning to the square where the Justice League members gathered. Don't underestimate his previous waste of time. In reality, only 20 seconds had passed since he took off, emitting energy silk to search for his target. The target base is here. Xinian opened his right palm and used white divine power to construct a three-dimensional image of the Earth. Seeing the coordinates of the Earth displayed on Xinian's hand, Wonder Woman, Batman, The Flash, and Cyborg almost blurted out, "It's Bazarnov." Aquaman shrugged, feeling the loss of his lack of knowledge. Wonder Woman explained sympathetically, "It's a ghost town not far from Moscow. It was abandoned after a nuclear accident 30 years ago, and now even the local army won't go in." The Flash couldn't help but complain, "The radiation there might be so strong that it can make a person grow an arm out of his neck." "I see. It's indeed the best place to build the Apocalypse base." Cyborg said quickly, "Apocalypse technology can easily use the nuclear radiation there as the main energy source for the base, and it's not easy for us humans to detect. Now, the radiation there should be basically exhausted. Then what are you waiting for? Get ready to go immediately. We'll discuss the specific response plan on the fighter plane." Batman spoke in a deep voice, and with a roar from above, a black bat fighter plane landed from the sky on the open space in the square. The Flash spread his hands and suddenly said, "Didn't you notice? The Great God has left a long time ago." Aquaman and others only then noticed that the mysterious young man was no longer in the square. Also missing are Supergirl, Superman, Steppenwolf, Danger. Refuse to be short. Chapter 115 The most powerful moment of super deification. Thousands of meters above Metropolis, a high-tech, bat-inspired fighter jet, its tail blazing, sped at full speed towards Pozharnov, Russia. Inside the Batplane, Wonder Woman, Batman, The Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg assembled their weapons, ready for the final battle upon arrival. Batman temporarily took off the helmet of his batsuit, revealing a handsome face with vicissitudes and determination. He looked at the other heroes in the cabin and said, "The most important issue now is not Steppenwolf, but what we must consider if the mother box has become a trinity. What should we do? It's not that I don't trust Superman, or even that powerful helper just now." Cyborg took a deep breath, his left eye flashing with an electronic red light, and said solemnly, "The mother box is a strategic item built with the top technology of Apocalypse. Darkseid has used it to invade and occupy countless planets. If the three mother boxes are only in the initial stage of combination, it is indeed possible to separate them with super strong external force alone. But once the mother box trinity is completely combined together, external force or explosion impact will only enhance their cohesion. Also, the mother box that reaches trinity has the power to open a sonic boom channel and destroy the world. The body is reshaped and transformed by the Apocalypse technology of the mother box. Cyborg is very clear about the powerful performance and power of the Trinity Mother Box." "Wait a minute," the Flash asked, raising his hand curiously like a studious student. "I can barely comprehend the power of annihilation. But what's a sonic boom tunnel?" Cyborg quickly explained, "Sonic boom tunnels allow for long-distance teleportation. Earth and Apocalypse are so far apart that even interstellar battleships can't reach them. Sonic boom tunnels can instantly connect the two places. Steppenwolf reached Earth via a sonic boom tunnel." "I see. That's truly impressive," the Flash exclaimed. "So, the crux of this war now lies in those three boxes." Aquaman shrugged. "All right, Batman said gravely. In that case, let's consider our battle plan. What if the mother boxes have already become a trinity? How should we respond? Cyborg's right eye, still human, lit up with a determined look as he heard these words. He had a certain feeling that his current, mechanical form existed for this very moment. Diana, aren't you going to say something? Batman suddenly glanced sideways at the beautiful woman, who had remained silent. Wonder Woman Diana stared out the fighter plane window. Only after hearing Batman's words did she turn back and whisper, I was just thinking that by the time we get there, that person might have almost solved everything. The Batplane jolted through the clouds, and Batman, clutching the glass jar of starfish in his arms, frowned. The Wonder Woman Diana Prince before him was a departure from the intellectual and independent person he usually knew. Something that might offend Wonder Woman. The centenarian goddess was a bit like a young girl in love. She seemed to be blindly following the powerful ally who suddenly joined the fray. This feeling displeased Batman. He felt that this contradicted the original purpose of the Justice League. Even Superman's unparalleled strength ultimately facilitated the formation of the Justice League, a way to share the burden of future crises. Now, that one individual's existence was far more reliable than the Justice League itself. So, was the Justice League even necessary? Pozharnov, Russia. The city here has expanded from its original abandoned factory center into an alien base encompassing half the size of a city. Demons of the Apocalypse Force, armed with laser guns, patrol the alien base's ground and skies, forming a massive, crimson energy shield. Meanwhile, in the abandoned factory at the heart of the alien base, Steppenwolf's old, rough face was filled with excitement. The steel scale armor clad across his 2 to 3 meter tall frame gave him a sharp breath. With trembling hands, he held the final mother box and offered it forward like a sacrifice. Low in the sky above, 2 identical awakened mother boxes floated. With a sizzling sound, the 3 awakened mother boxes gathered together, forming a line in the low sky. Wisps of electric light shone from their metal surfaces, and they began to intertwine and connect with each other. The 3 mother boxes began to merge into Trinity. They only needed to wait for the moment of their union, the moment of their return to the Lord of Darkness. A glint of water flashed through Steppenwolf's cloudy eyes, and his body and steel scale armor trembled with excitement. But then, accompanied by a resounding bang, Steppenwolf instinctively looked upwards, only to see the energy shield recede like a tide. Steppenwolf was stunned. Without a single warning or precaution, the energy shield was breached. Outside the abandoned factory, at the edge of the alien base, a humanoid streak of light, as bright as daylight, pierced the energy shield and forced its way from the sky into the alien base's interior. Whoosh! 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 Tens of thousands of demons within the alien base immediately activated their fixed turrets and portable firearms, unleashing a barrage of crimson, blazing laser beams. In that instant, the laser beams poured upwards like rain, dense and dense, leaving no room for escape, enveloping the invading entity with its own light source. Flying through the air, the supremely deified Nian stretched his arms out to his sides, his iron form instantly emanating a ball of condensed golden light. He was like a human-shaped sun radiating a dazzling glow, instantly illuminating the gloomy city. The laser beams that enveloped him from all directions fell upon the golden ball of light like raindrops hitting a shell of repeatedly tempered steel, unable to penetrate its defenses. This was natural. The golden energy shield Nian had extended was a fusion of surging divine power and a bioforce field. It was the unique bioenergy of 2 major races, Earth's old gods and the Kryptonians. No one else is here, that's great, Nian muttered to himself, his eyes flashing with 2 cold white lightning bolts. In this state, without any help, he was at his strongest. Nian suddenly thrust his arms outward completely. Centered on his black superhero suit, countless white lightning bolts pierced the air, rising and unleashing a devastating wave of energy. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A tidal wave of energy quickly swept from the sky to the ground, crushing abandoned buildings and annihilating the fleeing demon soldiers. Everything within a radius of several thousand meters was flattened. The original abandoned factory was gone. The 3 combined mother boxes remained suspended in the air. On the ground nearby, the sole surviving Steppenwolf hammered his axe into the ground, securing himself from being blown away by the energy shockwave. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116, The Disadvantages of Super Deification, Sekiro. A strong wind swept across the ground, stirring up countless waves of rubble and dust. In the central area of the alien base, almost everything was gone, obliterated by the tidal wave of energy, flattening the ground by a meter or two. Low in the sky, fearful of the intruders, the three awakened mother boxes seemed to tremble. The lingering white lightning crackled, accelerating the process of the Trinity's union. Whoosh! The rubble and dust billowed outward again, and the figure resembling the sun descended from the sky, his black Superman cape fluttering behind him. The young man advanced directly toward the three mother boxes. Seeing the intruder approaching the mother boxes, he shouted, "No! Not one step closer!" The Steppenwolf on the ground, like an old lone wolf, its armored scales bristling like hair. With his sturdy right hand, he pulled a large axe from the ground and, reckless, charged towards the super deified Nian. The axe in Steppenwolf's hand, gifted by a certain king, had ripped through the bodies of powerful races across the universe, stained with the crimson blood of countless Amazon warriors. It carried a chilling, cold, and menacing aura. At this moment, the axe blade, like an old, lone wolf extending its sharpest claws, descended with a devastating golden flash. The air, even space, seemed to be split in two. This was Steppenwolf's most powerful and desperate attack. Facing Steppenwolf's swift and powerful pounce, he swung. Too slow. Nian shook his head, seemingly disappointed, and raised his right palm directly and swiftly. Clang. The collision of metal axe blade and flesh produced a clanging sound, and an incredibly violent gust of wind swept through Nian's silver hair and dark cloak. Steppenwolf's eyes widened in disbelief as he saw his axe blade, brimming with golden lightning energy and imbued with his utmost strength, firmly grasped by a single young hand. That hand, both in energy and strength, far surpassed his own. Kryptonian? How is that possible? Steppenwolf's eyes flashed bloodshot, his hands tightly gripping the axe. No matter how hard he pushed forward or pulled back, the axe remained firmly in the hands of the super deified Nian. His right hand maintained a firm grip on the axe, and his feet suddenly lifted off the ground. Super deified Nian gradually levitated, his silver hair and dark cape flying wildly behind him. He soared to a low altitude of about 2 meters, gazing down at Steppenwolf. His grip on the axe blade began to press down. It wasn't just the terrifying force channeled from the axe. The surge of divine power and biological force fields, like literal pressure, thundered down upon Steppenwolf's body. With both hands gripping the axe handle, Steppenwolf's body trembled violently, his waist continuously bent. The raised steel scales on his armor crackled, and suddenly, with a thud, Steppenwolf's knees collapsed to the ground, unable to bear the weight. The ground cracked like a spider web, and Steppenwolf's knees sank into the earth. Feeling humiliated, Steppenwolf trembled with fear. He had only witnessed this terrifying power, unable to even think of resisting it, in the kings he worshipped. Meanwhile, the young man, floating low in the sky ahead, was like a small rising sun, his body constantly radiating white lightning and rippling with golden energy. At this moment, the super deified Nian suddenly coughed softly, and a trickle of bright red blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. The blood seemed to contain abundant energy, transforming into bolts of lightning that ravaged the surrounding earth. Steppenwolf was stunned by this. It was unimaginable. Before him, a powerful being rarely seen in the universe was actually coughing up blood. Super deified Nian's brow furrowed slightly. In that instant, he felt as if a spider's thread had snapped deep within him. Was this due to the excessive energy consumed in the battle and while searching for his target? No. Super deified Nian's brain, like a supercomputer, scanned his body like a clairvoyant, quickly arriving at an answer that baffled even him. Rather than excessive energy consumption, it was the result of an excessive accumulation of energy within his body. Super deified Nian's energy was now approximately 10% to 20% greater than when he first attained super deified mode. The rate at which super deified mode absorbed solar energy far exceeded its current energy consumption. This sounded like a good thing, like a perpetual motion machine. However, the abundant and powerful energy within his body, unable to be released, began to affect his body's perfect balance. This was why even the iron-bodied Nian was coughing up blood, much like a nosebleed caused by excessive Achaean blood. So, this also meant, once Nian enters super deification mode, He becomes a being truly born for combat, demanding constant, intense combat, a single, uninterrupted moment. Otherwise, his body might burst from the sun's energy. Previously, Superman could barely fight. Now, having flown all the way here, super deification Nian practically consumed no energy. As for Steppenwolf, well, dealing with him would cost him less than the combined energy of just flying. Super deification Nian's quick thinking led him to a swift conclusion. A quick resolution was necessary, resolving the mother box crisis and then heading to a solar-free zone. Nian's first thought was Xiao Wang's devouring dimension. Xiao Wang allowed for instant entry and exit, no solar power, and no risk of destruction, a truly promising option. Thinking of this, Nian wiped the blood from his mouth with his left hand. At that moment, Steppenwolf seemed to have seized a fleeting opportunity to strike back. Kneeling on the ground, Steppenwolf suddenly released his axe handle. His massive, steel-armored frame, blazing with golden lightning, he lunged swiftly towards Nian, hovering low in the sky ahead. Even at the cost of his own life, he would buy time for the trinity of the mother box. Steppenwolf's eyes gleamed with brilliance. At that moment, he too made his final decision. He would stake his honor, his life, everything to stop the invader here. And then, nothing happened. Steppenwolf, still pouncing forward, staring blankly down, could be seen shattering the armor on his chest with one hand, piercing his body with divine power and force fields. The end of his fist burst through the armor on his back. There was no blood. The heat had already evaporated the blood before it even fell. The axe fell freely to the ground beside him, burying itself diagonally into the earth. "My king." Steppenwolf muttered to himself, his eyes flashing with resentment, nostalgia, and relief. Then, a piercing white light melted through his chest, and his body, along with his armor, collapsed backwards, lifeless. "This is my strongest attack yet," the deified Nian whispered softly, looking at Steppenwolf's corpse on the ground. Then, Nian flew over Steppenwolf's corpse and landed directly in front of the three mother boxes, placing his hands on them, one on the left and one on the right. He didn't attempt to separate the three mother boxes that were about to merge. Instead, he used all his strength and energy to squeeze them inward. Nian's eyes flashed with a piercing white divine light, like a Kryptonian god. He pressed his palms inward, trying to crush the three mother boxes together. Chapter 117, The End, Trinity. Trample. Two figures appeared from the distant sky, soaring at breakneck speed, swooping down diagonally to the base's site. Were they none other than Supergirl Kara Danvers and Superman Kal-El, the two Kryptonian siblings? Superman had even changed into a dark black suit, with a cape adorned in vibrant crimson. He'd also wanted to wear the Kryptonian home clothes, complete with dark black top and cape, but the only one he had was taken by Nian. "Is it over?" Supergirl glanced at the base flattened by the energy wave, her gaze darting forward, past Steppenwolf, sprawled on the ground with his chest hollow, to a young man standing nearby, his dark cape billowing. Meanwhile, a silver-haired young man, radiating a violent and powerful energy, pressed his palm towards the three mother boxes about to merge, a merger, not a fusion of the three mother boxes, but rather the awakened mother boxes adjusting their own system frequencies to a single, overclocked state. "He wants to destroy the mother boxes outright," Superman said gravely. "Apocalypse mother boxes are indestructible, can they do that?" Supergirl asked nervously, about to go over to help Nian, but was stopped by Superman. Superman, his eyes piercing, surveyed the scene ahead and made a decisive assessment. "If even he can't do it, then even with us, we can't. If we go over, we'll only hinder him." Ahead, the deified Nian held the three mother boxes tightly in his palms. Utilizing the power of the old gods and his bionic force field, he pushed them, shrouded in white lightning, together. Crack! The three awakened mother boxes in the low sky shook violently like Rubik's cubes, emitting a shrill groaning sound as if possessing intelligent life. Despite this, the mother boxes were only slightly flattened, their surfaces showing no signs of breaking. "No." Supergirl's eyes widened. "He hasn't even used his full strength yet," Superman said quickly. He knew Nian's current strength better than anyone else. As if echoing Superman's words, the super deified Nian suddenly roared, a roar so loud it was noticeable as ultrasonic waves. At this moment, Nian's body, in its current state, seemed to burst into flames. White lightning and golden flames intertwined and rose, completely engulfing the dark-skinned young man, transforming him into a veritable sun, The ground beneath him began to tremble violently, and the clouds above were blown away by the strong wind. The lingering rays of the late afternoon sun shone down. Nian exhausted all his divine power and energy, preparing for this final, ultimate attack. The force he exerted was too much for even a body of steel to withstand, and he coughed up more blood from his open mouth. Crack! The three awakened mother boxes seemed to be struggling, and then, almost simultaneously, a shocking, tiny crack appeared on the surface of the three trembling mother boxes. However, at the same time, the mother box also reached the critical point of the Trinity, projecting its weapon through the space behind it. Silver energy, accompanied by a sonic boom, activated and created a circular portal. Buzz! The other end of the sonic boom portal wasn't anywhere on Earth, but rather a dim, sinister, yet deeply sacred ancient temple. Further back, at the end of the hall, a row of magnificent, ultra-modern skyscrapers stood. Not far in front of the portal on the other side of the sonic boom, stood Desed, who had previously communicated with Steppenwolf over long distance. Now, he and another alien stood, each playing supporting role, on either side of the towering figure. Behind him, more powerful alien demons knelt in awe, also gazing at the unflinching yet majestic king, Darkseid. Darkseid's eyes shone with a white divine light as he coldly gazed at the deified Nian, who was pushing the three mother boxes, and at Steppenwolf's corpse lying on the ground beside him. After the sonic boom tunnel opened, Superman and Supergirl quickly flew to the front of the tunnel portal. The two Kryptonians stood guard over Nian, shielding him from the gaze of Darkseid's forces. At this moment, the deified Nian froze for a moment. The three mother boxes he was squeezing in his hands were cracked. As the cracks on the metal boxes widened, the blood he had just coughed up flowed into them. At the same time, a drop of silver-white energy, resembling the liquid within the mother boxes, dripped onto his palm. No way. At that moment, even Nian had an extremely absurd thought. He soon realized that this was more than just a thought. Another system of extraordinary power entered his body, forming an unprecedented three-way confrontation with the power of the old gods and his Kryptonian physique. The moment this trend formed, the balance was instantly shattered. Superman and Supergirl, with their backs to Nian, had no idea what had happened to him behind them, but at the same time, a chill ran down their spines, like a chill in their hearts. Above the divine realm, high on the throne of Asgard, the one-eyed king listened quietly as Thor, the god of thunder, recounted the Battle of New York. Suddenly, he lifted his one remaining eye and gazed beyond the Asgardian halls, into the dark yet radiant depths of the infinite starry sky. In the center of the Milky Way, on a crimson planet barely resembling a head, a white-clad man with raying hair stood in a large courtyard, ablaze with flowers and bubbling fountains. Suddenly, a sense of purpose seized him, and he looked up at a point in the sky, muttering fearfully, "Forget about the seeds on Earth." Somewhere in the universe, a place devoid of light, a woman, shrouded in a black veil, her skin, exposed to the air, unnaturally pale and translucent, opened her eyes. Her body was constantly ethereal, devoid of form. Sometimes it resembled a beautiful young woman with an incredibly graceful and voluptuous figure, revealing the curves of a mature, curvaceous figure. Sometimes it resembled a cute little girl kicking her white, tender feet, making crisp, cute, and playful sounds, her body shifting in a never-ending cycle. Interesting. Perhaps you're more suitable to be my spokesperson than that one. Elsewhere in the universe, a mysterious being sat on a strange chair, its eyes filled with uncertainty. It was as if, after all the events in the universe, a mystery beyond its comprehension had finally emerged. I don't know. In that brief moment, powerful beings in countless mysterious and unknown regions of the vast universe awoke, one after another, looking up at the sky. It's bad. The Ancient One, within the Great Hall of Kamartaj, frowned. She suddenly took a step forward. Without the aid of a portal, the yellow-robed figure vanished from the hall. Chapter 118 Trinity's Nian. From the dawn of the universe until now, this scene has been the only one, perhaps the last. The wisdom of revelation, the power of the old gods, the body of Krypton, the Trinity. Nian continued to move his hands instinctively, and the space around his palms twisted and squeezed. The mother box, once so indestructible after being painstakingly pushed through and cracked, now shattered like a fragile foam box, shattering into destruction. Chi-Chi. Nian transformed into a figure of white light, his sides radiating and interweaving black lightning bolts, as if imbued with both destructive and creative properties, tearing and reshaping space, annihilating everything within a 3-meter radius into particles. Nian could almost hear the distinct snapping of countless invisible spider silk within him. Even with his spider powers to aid him, the loss of control and collapse had already begun. His fingers trembled with difficulty. Nian's body became increasingly difficult to control. His perfect state had been completely shattered, yet he felt a sense of omnipotence. But this time, it was probably not an illusion. At this moment, at the edge of the clearing at the side of the alien base, a faint glass mirror surface appeared. Its special properties shielded it from outside observation. Nian faintly heard a familiar, steady female voice, "If you continue to stay here, you will destroy many things, including yourself. I will pull you into the mirror dimension." It was the supreme sorcerer, the Ancient One. Nian quickly grasped this, and his vision now penetrated the unknown barrier, sizing up the Ancient One standing nearby in the mirror dimension. Pulling him into the mirror dimension? This was indeed a better option than the devouring dimension. Just as the Ancient One was about to pull him into the mirror dimension, Trinity Nian suddenly spoke, "Master, wait." He had one last thing to do, a slight experiment. "Get out of the way, Superman, Kara." Nian raised his gaze and spoke with difficulty to the two men standing more than 10 meters away. At the same time, he gradually clenched the 5 fingers of his right hand into a fist, slowly and with difficulty and determination, raising it upwards. Hearing his words, Superman and Supergirl, standing in front of the sonic tunnel, quickly moved aside. Inside the Apocalypse Palace, where the sonic tunnel connects, Darkseid, standing at the forefront, seemed to realize something and quickly called out, "Desid, close the door immediately." This king, who had conquered countless worlds, seemed to have a hint of panic in his words. How could this be possible? Desid, who was serving beside him, had no time to think. He himself felt a tingling sense of crisis. He raised his hands, muttering something rapidly. Immediately, a box, similar to the mother box, yet completely different, flew out of his arms at high speed and hovered close in front of him. This strange little box shook violently upon its appearance, radiating a series of interwoven technological beams. These beams sank into the air, forming a protective shield. The sonic tunnel opened by the mother box also began to shrink. At this moment, Trinity Nian finally threw a punch with his right hand. This punch, far from surpassing the power of a super god, was several times slower than that of an ordinary human. But as the punch blasted forward, the sound, light, and even space ahead of Nian began to extinguish and distort. A surge of energy, condensed with particle atomization, the destructive power of the old gods, and the Kryptonian biofield, erupted forward. Boom! Even though the punch's target was the sonic tunnel, the ripples that spilled outwards annihilated vast tracts of land. Superman and Supergirl, standing on either side, raised their palms, mobilizing their full biofield to form a defense, blocking the outflowing energy shockwave. The main shockwave from the punch continued forward, hurtling towards the shrinking sonic tunnel at a breakneck speed. At the critical moment, the sonic tunnel was completely closed and disappeared into the low sky. On Apocalypse, Desid, operating the box within the temple, breathed a sigh of relief. But he didn't see that at this moment, above Earth. Trinity Nian's punch continued to strike the void where the tunnel had vanished. As if carrying an energy shockwave of intelligent consciousness, it ripped through space, following the last remaining trace of the sonic tunnel on Earth. Tracing back upwards with its own sonic tunnel special effects, it vanished at the spot where it had been. Meanwhile, countless billions of light-years from Earth, an area inaccessible even to interstellar battleships. Apocalypse, the king's palace. Desid's eyes suddenly widened in horror, his cloaked body instinctively trembling with fear. It was at the very spot where the sonic tunnel had opened that a terrifying energy shockwave emerged. Like a ray of judgment. At that moment, the boxed object suspended in the low sky autonomously constructed defenses. Darkseid's eyes, once gleaming with divine white light, blazed with a crimson, twisting lightning. Boom! Exclamation mark. The magnificent and glorious ancient hall was completely ripped apart by a terrifying surge of chaotic energy. The shattered demonic corpses and building tiles were annihilated into particles before they could even land. The energy shockwave continued like a flood from a broken dam, rushing towards the city of Apocalypse outside the hall. Nian no longer had any idea what happened on Apocalypse. After delivering that punch in Trinity mode, he was pulled into the mirror dimension by the Ancient One. And so, when the Black Bat fighter finally arrived and landed at the site of the former Bozharnov alien base, swiftly disembarking from the fighter's cabin, Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg were met by a barren expanse stretching for several kilometers. In the center of the clearing stood Superman and Supergirl. On the ground nearby, Steppenwolf's body lay completely cold. "Did you do this?" Batman descended, holding Kunlua, and asked Superman on the field. Superman shook his head and glanced down at his burned palm. "Is he okay?" Wonder Woman asked quickly. "No." Supergirl obviously knew who Diana was referring to, and shook her head gently, saying, "Someone's in trouble, probably one of Apocalypse's enemies. Steppenwolf is dead, the mother box is destroyed, is this war over?" Cyborg said, looking around in disbelief. He had originally been determined to die, wanting to perish with the mother box, but now he arrived and it was already over? "Why do I feel like I'm here to show my support?" The Flash shrugged, expressing the thoughts of many present, and Aquaman patted his shoulder in agreement. "Anyway, as long as this crisis is resolved," said Batman. "I'm afraid this is just the beginning." Cyborg looked up at the setting sun and the night sky. "Apocalypse has targeted Earth. I don't know what they're after, but they won't give up so easily." Everyone was silent for a moment, until Batman said in a deep voice, "This is the reason for the existence of our Justice League. Regardless, the war with Apocalypse has come to a temporary end. The outcome was a great victory for Earth. But in the long run, the world will face many more crises, both known and unknown. After experiencing this day, every hero on the battlefield will be unable to erase the image of that young man, like a sun, from their minds for a long time to come. In the face of future irresistible crises, they will undoubtedly regard him as their last hope. After all, that is the true ceiling of Earth's combat power." Chapter 119, Universe, School, additional chapter for Master Yeshi Wuxi. Apocalypse. From the side of the ancient temple, a bottomless abyss appeared on the earth, stretching all the way to the edge of Apocalypse City. Puffs of black smoke rose from it. Snap! A sturdy arm reached out from the abyss, grasping the broken ground beside it. From within the darkness, a pair of eyes gleaming with crimson lightning lit up. At that moment, those eyes revealed pain, rage, a cold, merciless look. A voice, like a demon, raspy and calm, rang out, "Earth, I will definitely go. As long as he controls that, even the most powerful being will be at his disposal." Somewhere in the universe, above a planet in outer space, an immense super-interstellar battleship was docked. Inside the battleship's cabin, in a dark hall with a cosmic backdrop outside the window, sat a bald being resembling the towering figure of Darkseid, his rough skin a purple potato-colored background. "Master. Loki has failed utterly. Not only did he lose an entire fleet of warships, he also lost a Mind Stone." An alien elder in a neat uniform floated into the hall from outside, knelt on the ground very gentlemanly and respectfully, lowered his head and said to the bald figure on the main throne. Thanos sat on the main throne with an unchanged expression, one hand slightly supporting the armrest of the main throne, his fist supporting one side of his face, and asked, "Gamora, have you found her?" "Not yet." Ebony Maw, one of the Black Order, shook his head slightly and said, "She should have gone to the alien civilization on the other side of the Milky Way. I have contacted Ronan and asked him to find the most important rough stone and keep an eye on Gamora's whereabouts." Thanos narrowed his eyes and said calmly, "Send Nebula out, she can find Gamora. Gamora is an indispensable link. She must be brought back to me as soon as possible." "Yes, Master." Ebony Maw nodded in acceptance. Thanos continued, "Have you found the location of the Dwarven tribe?" Ebony Maw quickly responded, "We're narrowing down the area. We should be able to locate it soon." "Very good," Thanos nodded gently. He lowered his massive arm from the back of his chair, clenched his fist, and spoke coldly, "When everything is ready, I will go to Earth. Then they will understand that I am Destiny." Above the 9 realms, Asgard. Inside the Asgardian palace, within a small, isolated prison with a transparent glass doorway, a barrier of extremely powerful divine power was established. Inside this prison, barely big enough for a mattress, a handsome, devilish young man suddenly woke up. Beads of sweat covered his forehead and nose, and the back of his clothes were soaked with sweat. His hair stood on end, and goosebumps covered his skin. The evil god Loki's first reaction upon waking was to hurriedly reach out and touch his chest. Although there was no wound there, The touch of his fingers still brought back the pain seared into his memory. It hurts. Oh, right, I'm not on Earth anymore. I failed, I almost died. Loki muttered to himself, then, completely exhausted, he collapsed back onto the bed in his claustrophobic prison. He couldn't remember how many times he'd woken up like this. His dreams ended with a figure of a young man in a silver spider suit, and that finger, the silver metal spider silk that pierced his clone's forehead, and the dagger blade that pierced his original body's chest. Even now, when he recalled it, Loki shuddered subconsciously and curled up slightly. That fear was implanted in the deepest part of his body and soul. Never going back to Earth again, Loki muttered softly, closing his eyes, unsure of where his next fate would lead. Earth. Washington, a residential building, an ordinary, unremarkable single room. Master, it's time to get up for breakfast. Otherwise, you'll be late for school. Nian woke to the familiar, melodious moans of his crimson maid. The dark-haired boy, Nian, was yawning and stretching as he stood up when he saw a small girl run over and draw aside the curtains. The cool, piercing morning light streamed in through the window. Why do I remember it being the weekend? Nian mumbled drowsily, ruffling his sleep-tangled hair. No, it's only Friday, little Wanda said, bustling out of the room again. 3 days have already passed since then, Nian muttered inexplicably. He threw back the covers, stood up, put on his shoes, and went to the closet in his room. He opened the bottom drawer and removed the white shirt from the top. There, stacked quietly on either side, lay a black and white bodysuit with a spider logo and a dark cape with an S-shaped family totem. The strange outfits were piling up. Nian silently closed the bottom drawer again, opened the top drawer, and pulled out a normal long-sleeved suit from the drawer. After washing and changing, Nian went outside to have breakfast with Wanda. The living room television was on, still broadcasting the alien incident from a few days earlier. However, due to the Justice League's debut battle and the miraculous resurrection of the superhero Superman, news reports attributed the alien invasion to a joint effort between Superman and the Justice League. After all, who would have thought that the powerful being who almost single-handedly resolved the alien invasion was just an ordinary high school student with exams to attend? Nian breathed a sigh of relief, as it saved him a lot of unnecessary trouble. He knew this was likely the work of his aunt. With the world focused on Superman's resurrection, no one paid attention to the sun-like figure that had once appeared in the sky. After eliminating Apocalypse's hidden alien forces on Earth, Nian was finally able to return to a relatively peaceful daily life. The only downside was that his aunt's evening practice was temporarily cancelled, saying it was to give him a good rest. Well, this was a cruel thing for the studious Nian. Master, what's wrong? Sitting on the chair opposite, Wanda looked at Nian, who looked a little depressed, and asked curiously. Nothing. Nian shook his head, and suddenly seemed to remember something, and reminded, by the way, this weekend, you have to go to a place to study. I found a teacher for you. Teacher? What to learn? Wanda tilted her little head slightly, and her crimson hair tied into 2 ponytails swayed gently. Cute. Nian said, you stay at home on Saturday, and someone will pick you up at 10 o'clock in the morning. You will know then. Okay, I will learn whatever the master tells me to learn. Wanda suppressed her curiosity and nodded obediently. Now she doesn't know what kind of world she is about to step into. Recently, there should be at least 3 updates a day. First, pay back the chapters out for rewards and monthly tickets. Chapter 120 I just do whatever I want. Master, I'm going out. Be careful on your way. A sun-shielding baker hat held down her crimson hair. Wanda, dressed in a black and white long-sleeved uniform dress, sat on a stool by the door. She lifted her fair, pink feet slightly and slipped white stockings onto her glittering, delicate feet. With gentle tugs, the stockings slid down her long legs, enveloping her slender, snow-white flesh. Then, she slipped on her opaque knee-high white socks. Wanda continued to put on her black boots, turning back to whisper a word before leaving. You too, Nian nodded in response, watching the crimson figure leave the doorway. It had to be said. Wanda, who had been learning from the system butler and becoming increasingly diligent and capable, often made Nian feel like the younger one in the family. This led to him becoming even more lazy and lazy at home. It was unavoidable, given that both the older and younger women in the family were so capable. Come on, it's time to get going, too. Nian stretched once more, preparing to leave for school. Outside, Ever since the Justice League debuted, Superman was resurrected, and the hidden alien forces were eliminated, the clouds that had obscured the city sky dissipated, and every day was a bright, sunny day. The snow on the streets and buildings had completely melted away. On some city streets, workers were replacing old signs and posters commemorating Superman. The white winter was officially leaving, and everything was reviving, welcoming a new life, just like Superman himself. Nian soon encountered a familiar girl at a familiar corner. Upon seeing him, she waved in greeting. It was none other than his childhood sweetheart, Gwen. But today, while Gwen wore her usual neat long-sleeved shirt, highlighting her youth and intellectuality, she was wearing beige casual trousers, the hems of which met her white canvas shoes, completely concealing her legs. A thought struck Nian, and a sudden sense of concern welled up in his mind. After all, not long ago, even in winter, Gwen had always worn skirts, unfazed by the cold. Today, with the warmer weather, she'd suddenly changed into airtight trousers, something strange. Perhaps even Nian himself hadn't noticed, but he'd begun paying attention to Gwen's daily attire, something he rarely did. "What's wrong?" Gwen asked casually, smoothing her short blonde hair by her ear. "Nothing, let's go." Nian averted his gaze without a trace, not stopping, continuing on his way with his backpack on his shoulder. Gwen watched Nian's back, stamping her foot softly before following him as if nothing had happened. After walking a few steps, Gwen heard Nian ask beside her, "Are you cold?" "Huh?" Gwen was slightly startled, then smiled cheerfully and rolled her eyes at him. "No." Fearing Nian would prematurely end the conversation, Gwen suddenly leaned forward and whispered mysteriously in his ear, "Want to know why I'm dressed like this today?" "Why?" Nian followed Gwen's lead, genuinely curious. Gwen immediately pulled Nian to a stop. She glanced around the street, her cheeks flushing brightly. She nervously reached up and pulled up her trouser leg. Nian was stunned. It was Gwen who had lifted her right trouser leg, revealing a small section underneath. Her beautiful legs, lightly wrapped in semi-transparent black stockings, gleamed in the sunlight, their skin glistening and smooth. Within 2 or 3 seconds, Gwen had already let them go, her face flushed. A wisp of steam rose from her head. Nian's heart raced. Wearing stockings under trousers is like a small gift, wrapped in a way that makes them mysterious and surprising. And by wearing them this way, Gwen indirectly hinted that they were meant for him. And so, the instantaneous satisfaction he felt far surpassed Gwen's usual dresses. He understood. "Where did you learn that?" Nian couldn't help but ask. "It's been trending online lately, so I thought I'd give it a try." Gwen blushed and whispered, "How's it going?" "Great." Nian gave a thumbs up, unstinting in his praise. "Would you like to come over to my house this weekend?" Gwen summoned her courage. "You haven't been to my house in ages. And besides, there's that compensation you mentioned before." Hearing the girl's last words, Nian's heart was completely moved. Unlike last time, this time, he was willing to risk Officer George's gun. How could he refuse? Nian was about to speak, but just then, accompanied by a gust of wind from the front, a figure appeared in front of them as if by teleportation. No sneaking around, Senior. A beaming smile graced the beautiful girl's delicate, gentle face. Her flowing dark blonde hair arced platinum in the sunlight. Her dress hung down, seemingly defying the laws of physics, and 2 slender, pink, and smooth legs stretched out from beneath it. "Kara." Nian glanced at the girl before him and instinctively called out. "Good morning, Senior." Kara winked playfully and endearingly. "Good morning." Nian felt a sense of surrealism. After learning of the girl's hidden superwoman identity and her immensely powerful supernatural powers, seeing her reveal her sweet and lovely side held a unique charm in this contrast. "Kara, I say, don't use your supernatural powers carelessly out there." Gwen glanced around quickly, and when she saw no one was paying attention, she breathed a sigh of relief. "Don't worry, I'm fast. I only flew down here because I noticed no one was paying attention." Kara smiled as she glanced down at Gwen's feet. Her beautiful eyes lit up as she said, "So there's this trick. I've learned it. Don't look." Her little trick was known to the others, and Gwen quickly blocked her legs with her hands. Finding it impossible to block, she quickly jumped behind Nian. Kara followed her gaze, then quickly turned away with a slight blush. "Don't use X-ray vision." Gwen was startled, and quickly blocked Nian in front of her, saying with some gritted teeth, "Can Kryptonians do whatever they want?" After the last war, Xinian had also told Gwen about his junior Kara's identity. Sorry, Kara blinked, smiling confidently and sweetly. Kryptonians do whatever they want. Looking at the bickering duo, who seemed to have a relatively harmonious relationship, Xinian smiled helplessly, suddenly feeling that even the school's daily routines were no longer quiet. The three of them arrived at school together. Before Nian even entered the classroom, a classmate whispered that a teacher was looking for him. He arrived at the office door. Seeing it was open, Nian walked right in. "Teacher, what do you want to talk to me about?" Nian looked out the bright light from the office window and saw Felicia, the class's assistant instructor, sitting attentively in a chair. She had striking long silver hair. Chapter 121 Neurosis, Light and Shadow. Perhaps it was still a little early. The office on this side of the teaching building was empty, save for Felicia, a trainee teacher, who was diligently working in a chair, brimming with energy unmatched by the veteran teachers. The curtains were drawn across the office window, letting the morning light stream down onto Felicia's delicate, fair features, a look of earnest diligence. Felicia's hair was silver white, but she favored dark colors, making the contrast between white and black stand out. She was covering her mouth to yawn when she bumped into Nian, who walked in. She paused, a little flustered. Nian tactfully pretended not to notice. Felicia raised her beautiful eyes, observing the male students up close and personal for the first time. It was Nian Prince. He had a delicate, sunny appearance, and a height that was neither tall nor short for a boy's age. His shirt and pants were neatly dressed, and his shoes looked brand new, thanks to his lack of outdoor exercise. His figure was unremarkable, with no visible muscle mass. He was a perfectly ordinary teenager. Yes, just an ordinary high school student. Felicia reaffirmed her thoughts, growing even more curious about Instructor Roth's initial high praise. She looked at Nian standing before her and said gently, "Nian, can you explain why you suddenly left school during class a few days ago? Your answer will affect your school performance review." "I said I was off saving the world, teacher, do you believe me?" Nian asked bluntly. Felicia was stunned for a moment, then smiled slightly and said sympathetically, "I'm not much older than you, so I know that students your age all dream of becoming superheroes." Nian asked curiously, "So, which superhero do you like?" "Of course, it's the silver-haired goddess." Felicia's eyes lit up, and she said excitedly, "Because she has silver hair like me. Plus, she's so cool and awesome." Nian was speechless. Why are all the teachers in school like this? It's not good to like a superhero, but to like an impossible character, he sighed inwardly. "I started to think about changing schools overnight." Felicia was still talking excitedly. "Teacher, let me tell you something in secret. I also have a signed poster of the silver-haired goddess. I bought it online with a large sum of living expenses when I was still in college." Instructor Roth must be envious. Nian was even more speechless. He really didn't want to criticize the intern teacher in front of him. The so-called signed poster was definitely a fake. "Let me show you." Felicia was about to flip through the drawers, but soon she seemed to realize something and stared at Nian with a serious face. "Student Nian, don't try to change the subject." Nian. Anyway, did he change the subject? It was obvious that you, the teacher, were too obsessed with this topic. The corner of Nian's eye twitched, and he suddenly felt that the teacher in front of him was more like a cat than the yuan devourer, and behaved a little neurotically. Of course, he naturally couldn't say what he was thinking. That day, something happened at home, so I rushed back so anxiously that I didn't have time to communicate with the school. I should have told the class monitor about this. His words were absolutely true. For Nian, home was truly wherever his aunt was. So that's how it is. Gwen did tell me that day, Felicia said, undoubting it. Curiously, she asked, "Did something happen to your parents?" "I don't have any parents," Nian replied. "My aunt adopted me when I was a baby." "Oh, sorry. I didn't know," Felicia apologized hastily. "It's nothing. I think I'm fine now," Nian said sincerely. But to Felicia, it was clear the boy was struggling. For her, whose father had been in prison for theft since she was a child, this resonated with her. Felicia's expression softened, and she whispered to Nian, "It's okay. Go back to class." "Okay," Nian breathed a sigh of relief and was about to leave the office when Felicia stopped him. "From now on," Felicia said softly, "if you encounter any problems at school or home, you can come and ask the teacher." I'll do my best to help you, no matter what. Nian felt a little puzzled, but nodded. Thank you, teacher. I'll remember that. Felicia's eyes shone with a hint of maternal love as she watched Nian leave. That evening, after school, Nian had just returned home when a message from Kara Danvers arrived on his phone. Senior, are you free this weekend? My cousin wants to invite you to dinner sometime. Kara's cousin? This. Nian's heart began to wrestle. Going to Gwen's house, there was Officer George. Going to Kara's house, there was Superman. In Nian's opinion, the danger level was almost the same. Whose house should he go to this weekend? Should he go to neither, or even one a day? This was a question worth considering. Nian turned on the heating lamps in the house and sat on the soft sofa in the living room. Xiao Wang immediately leaned in, as usual, and rubbed his head affectionately against his palm. Guan Luo, as always, lay in his glass jar, like a real ornament, enjoying the last rays of the sun on the balcony. Nian half leaned back on the sofa, closing his eyes and savoring this rare moment of peace. Just then, someone opened the door and returned home. Wanda, you're back. Nian called out casually, without opening his eyes, continuing to lie flat. The person who had returned didn't respond. Instead, they came to the sofa in slippers and sat down next to Nian, who lay flat on his back. Nian caught a glimpse of a light, familiar fragrance. He instinctively opened his eyes, only to be greeted by a mature, beautiful, dark-haired woman. Aunt? Why are you back? Startled, Nian quickly sat up from the sofa. Why, can't I go home? Diana said with a slight, irritated smile. That's not what I meant. I just didn't expect you to be back so soon, Nian said with a knowing smile. Since a while ago, due to the beacon fire warning on Paradise Island, Diana had been leaving early and returning late. Because Wanda was taking care of Nian, breakfast and dinner were rarely eaten at home. So, Nian had mistakenly thought Wanda had returned. At that moment, the warm lights of the house blended with the afterglow of the setting sun on the balcony, creating a hazy blur of light and shadow within the living room. Nian glanced sideways at his aunt, whose features were sharply defined. Her delicate and perfect profile seemed divinely gifted, possessing a beauty unattainable by humans, especially her soft lips, bathed in a shimmering orange-red glow. Nian suddenly felt the urge to kiss her, to savor the medium within. This wasn't a subconscious impulse or instinct. It was a habit he'd developed over time, practicing whenever Wanda wasn't home or in the living room. But Nian knew he couldn't do it again. After all, with evening practice temporarily cancelled, there was no legitimate reason to take that step. The barrier between Nian and Diana now was a far stronger, more insurmountable barrier than their childhood sweetheart relationship with Gwen, like light and shadow that could only intersect, never blending. Nian suddenly smiled. So what? Since we've been reborn, let's not do anything we'll regret. Auntie, the young man said earnestly and directly, looking at the woman before him. I need to catch up on some lessons. Sorry, I'm changing computers, so the update will be delayed. Oh, and Black Cat Teacher has been added to the supporting cast. Please give us a thumbs up. Chapter 122 Fusion, Luxurious Lineup. Outside the balcony, the sun completely sank below the horizon, the inky blue of night gradually tinting the city sky. Inside the large living room, lit only by a single warm light, a blur of light and shadow seemed to blend together. Little Wong tactfully jumped off the sofa and strode lightly onto the balcony. With a flick of his cat's paw, he casually pulled up the draped curtains, dimming the living room's light even further. On the plush sofa, two figures, one large and one small, sat side by side, seemingly overlapping, their only separation being the subtle sound of their rapid breathing. The boy's short black hair began to turn silver white, strands of it cascading down his shoulders, mingling with the woman's long, jet black hair. Like the light and shadow in the living room, black and white became inseparable, indistinguishable from each other. Nian dug his fingers deep into the back of his lush hair, like a greedy child eagerly savoring the most delicious violet medium. It was unknown how long this scene lasted. Perhaps it was just a few seconds, or perhaps it lasted several minutes, or even more than 10. After all, with the physiques of two demigods, even not breathing wouldn't affect anything. Regardless, neither of them wanted to stop, clinging to this brief moment of crossing a forbidden boundary. Until, suddenly, the door unlocked and swung open. No one's back yet. A soft, sweet voice echoed as a blushing girl, carrying a school bag and a bag of groceries, stepped inside with some difficulty. She set her bag down and reached for the living room light switch next to the door. In that instant, a figure on the sofa reacted with lightning speed, darting through the living room like a flash of lightning, disappearing into the bathroom and closing the door behind them. Almost the next moment, the lights in the living room came on, as if dusk had turned to midday, illuminating the entire room. And so, when little Wanda looked up, she saw Nian, his hair silver again, sprawled face down on the sofa. Like dead. "Master, what's wrong with you?" Wanda asked curiously. "Don't mind me, let me think alone for a while. I have a homework problem, and it's too difficult." Nian waved his hand weakly. "Okay." Wanda blinked, changed into her slippers, and walked into the living room. She saw the lighted bathroom and the sound of the shower dripping. "Is Miss Diana back too?" Wanda's doll-like face lit up with joy, and she said happily, "That's great." Nian looked up. "Why? Is it so bad to eat alone with me?" "No, it's not. It's just..." The blushing girl bit her pink lip and finally cried out a little aggrievedly, "Master, you big fool," before trotting off to the kitchen. In reality, she was happy for Nian. After all, Wanda knew that Nian hadn't had dinner with Miss Diana in a long time and must be feeling a little lonely. Dinner time. Nian helped Wanda bring the grilled steaks and other dinner items to the table. Diana soon emerged from her room, dressed in a loose-fitting white gauze pajamas. Her still wet black hair was curled, casually draped over her perfectly curvaceous shoulders and neck. She looked less intellectual and more charming. Nian instinctively glanced at her lips. The curve was as perfect as ever, with only a slight, barely noticeable crack at the corner. Diana seemed to have caught his fleeting glance. Her exquisitely beautiful face remained expressionless as she gracefully walked to a nearby seat and sat down. Just as little Wanda turned to take the last of her meal, Diana reached out and tapped Nian's brow with a finger. A hint of anger and discomfort crossed her dignified, calm face, and her heart beat faster than it had before against the terrifying and powerful doomsday. Only Nian could have caused Diana to fall into such a predicament, forcing her to flee in panic for the first time. Nian covered his forehead in pain, but the corners of his mouth rose slightly, and he suddenly wanted to laugh out loud. But he knew that if he laughed, he would be really finished. "Master, do you want dessert?" Wanda's voice came from the kitchen. "No." Nian blinked and said, "I've already eaten dessert." Boom. Nian was hit by Diana's slap on the brow again. After dinner, the family of three sat on the sofa and watched TV. Wanda was cute and adorable, holding the little emperor and sitting quietly on one side. Her small feet dangled from the sofa and could not touch the ground. Diana sat on the other side with a book that was always obscure and difficult to understand. Her slender and shiny feet were tilted and stacked on the floor. Nian sat in the middle of the sofa with his legs crossed, his long silver hair scattered everywhere. At this time, Nian suddenly remembered he hadn't replied to the message yet. He'd already made a decision. Tomorrow he'd go to Gwen's, and the day after tomorrow to Kara's. Death was inevitable, so he might as well face life head-on. But when he pulled his phone from his pocket, the screen lit up, announcing a private message. A thought struck Nian. If it were Gwen and Kara, they'd probably use Twitter, so the message was likely from someone else. And Nian's social circle was so small, who would text him? Nian opened the message, his face instantly graver. It was an unsigned private message with a detailed address somewhere in New York. Furthermore, at the bottom of the message, a single English word, "stars," was written. Even without his signature, the sender's identity was clear. Nian glanced at Wanda, who was glued to the TV, her hands stroking the little emperor's fur. "Ahem, time for bed," Nian suddenly said. Wanda glanced at the time. It was only around 9 o'clock in the evening. Thinking Nian was just too sleepy, she nodded obediently, "Okay." Diana noticed Nian's change of heart and silently closed the book she was reading. After the lights went out and the living room was shrouded in darkness, Nian groped into Diana's room. Without hiding anything from his end, he mentioned the text message he had just received. "So, that girl is asking you for help?" Diana asked thoughtfully. "That's probably the case. Given her personality, she wouldn't send me a message like that for no reason." Nian nodded and said solemnly, "She's Wanda's family member and has helped me before. No matter what, I have to go check it out." "I'll go with you," Diana said. "No need." Nian shook his head and smiled. Now, I have the same abilities as you. And if you leave home, Wanda will be worried. But Diana was about to say something when the figure of an orange kitten slipped through the crack in the door. Behind the kitten, with its tail curled up, it lifted up a glass jar, and inside the jar was a colorful starfish. Meow. Xiao Wang looked at Xinian and called softly. Do you need to relay a message? Guan Luo sent out a thought. No need. Xinian smiled, and held Xiao Wang and Guan Luo in his arms respectively, then turned to Diana and said, And, are you relieved now? Okay, be careful. Diana nodded softly. With such a luxurious lineup, even the Steppenwolf could not threaten Xinian's life. It was time to let go and let the child try flying. At least take my equipment with you. Diana continued. Xinian scratched his head and said decisively, Forget about the clothes. As for weapons, just one is enough. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123, The Demigod Nian reappears. On the rooftop of a residential building in downtown Washington, a burly man, bored and drenched, stepped out onto his balcony with a can of beer, gazing blankly at the night sky as he sipped. Alice, it's been almost 2 months, and why hasn't the silver goddess appeared again? Instructor Roth muttered to himself. Ever since the battle with Abomination, the superhero silver goddess hadn't been seen in Washington, or anywhere else in the world. This was a crushing blow to Instructor Roth, a huge fan of the silver goddess who had established numerous online support groups. So, even with a salary increase from the school this month, he couldn't be happy at all. Ton. Instructor Roth leaned on the balcony railing, looking up as he downed the remaining half can of beer. A beam of cool silver light streamed down from the sky. In the distance, in front of the residential building, dark clouds parted, revealing a bright, silvery crescent moon. Instructor Roth's gaze instinctively shifted toward the moon. Suddenly, his pupils vibrated like an earthquake. A slender figure streaked across the city sky at high speed, continuing its flight toward the infinite night sky where the moon resided. He could vaguely make out a jacket, dark trousers, and a pair of ordinary black canvas shoes. A familiar-looking backpack slung over his shoulders. Most notably, he wore a baseball cap, holding down his long, undisguised silver hair. Wisps of it shone with a shimmering white divine light, flowing backwards. Silver-haired goddess. You've finally appeared. Instructor Roth gushed out a gulp of beer, tears welling in his eyes as he shouted to the heavens, Go save the world. I'll always support you. As if hearing his words, the figure, hundreds of meters above the city's night sky, visibly stumbled. Then, with a wave of his hand, he vanished into the sky. From 1,000 meters above the night sky, looking down from here, one could see most of the bustling city. The semi-deified Nian leaped forward, braving the night wind. His right hand grasped one end of the truth lasso, and as it whipped upward like a dragon, it entangled the dark clouds drifting high above, giving him the sense of soaring through the air. From the zipper of Xinian's backpack, a small orange head peeked out. Inside was a starfish in a glass jar. The little Yuan devouring beast emperor, braving the hurricane outside, could barely open its eyes, its head stubbornly fixed on the outside. It's been ages since I've soared like this, Guan Luo sighed in his mind. By the way, was I seen just now? Xinian's eye twitched, but he didn't seem overly concerned. After all, in addition to his baseball cap, he was also wearing a black cloth mask. The boy's face was barely visible except for his bright eyes. It must be said that the fruits of his nightly practice finally showed up tonight. Now, compared to his previous semi-deified state, Nian had a firm grasp on the techniques used to wield his strength and divine power. While his hair still turned a silvery white, he no longer lost control and accidentally destroyed anything around him. Of course, Nian's use of divine power still couldn't reach the unparalleled level of his aunt's unfettered control, such as using it to perform exquisite transformations and become invisible. Furthermore, Nian discovered that after the battle with the Apocalypse forces, his Aunt Diana's personal artifact, the Lasso of Truth, now held in his hand, had been activated and awakened by his then super-deified state, becoming even more spiritual and powerful. This was why Nian chose to carry it. Artifact, Lasso of Truth. While not as effective in combat as the Silver Guardian bracelet or the Sword of the God of Fire, its practicality and functionality were unmatched by other artifacts. Less than 10 minutes. Nian arrived at a large local car wash in Queens, New York, the address detailed in the text message he received. He noticed a large number of gang members moving around inside and outside the car wash, and there seemed to be signs of some arguing and quarreling. Nian chose not to enter the car wash through the main entrance. Instead, he sheathed his lasso of truth and quietly descended from the night sky onto the rooftop of an unoccupied building in the car wash. "Guan Luo, help me find someone and see where she is," Nian whispered. Features. A thought echoed in Nian's mind. A young girl with green hair should be easy to identify, Nian continued. Immediately, starting from Nian's backpack, an invisible spiritual thought spread outward, enveloping and permeating the entire car wash area. In a way, Guan Luo was truly too useful. Therefore, a few days ago, when Batman parted with Guan Luo, he showed his reluctance for the first time. Found her. She's alone in the last room on the 3rd floor, on the left side of the building, Guan Luo responded quickly, adding, "Wait a minute, she's noticed me. And she's not feeling well." Whoosh! While listening to Guan Luo's thoughts, Nian swiftly reached to the left side of the building. Like a flash of black-silver lightning, he nimbly swung from the roof to the window of the room Guan Luo had mentioned. None of the patrolling gang members below noticed his presence. The window of the target room was tightly closed. Fearing that breaking it open might disturb others, Nian quickly reached out and pulled a small orange cat from his backpack. As if understanding his intention, Xiao Wang opened his mouth, and several ferocious tentacles with tiny teeth extended, swallowing the window hole in one gulp. With only a slight snap, Nian slid unimpeded into the pitch-black room. The entire sequence was fluid, as if rehearsed countless times. Guan Luo suddenly felt that this young man had great potential and talent in some area. The room was about 30 square meters, unlit. A petite young woman lay on a bed nearby. In the darkness, sensing an intruder, she didn't immediately rise from the bed. Instead, she reluctantly raised her finger, and instantly, a fruit knife flew out from under the bed, its blade stabbing fiercely at Nian's crotch. Nian reacted with lightning speed, clapping his hands downwards and barely catching the blade. Breaking out in a cold sweat, he quickly said, "Boss Polaris, it's me." "Why, not through the front door, idiot?" Lorna, lying on the bed, scolded her angrily. But, from her words alone, it was clear she was exhausted, struggling to finish each sentence. Before setting off, Nian had noticed something strange. Given the forceful nature of Lorna Polaris, if she had sent him a message, the final identity would have been Boss, not Stars. Now, Nian understood why. Lorna was weak. 100 times weaker than he had ever seen her. Great, the computer is installed, I will start adding more updates tomorrow. Chapter 124 North Star and the Sun. Inside a large car wash in Queens, New York City, the darkened, sealed room was illuminated only by the bright, clear light of the moon, once ravaged by the super-deifieds Nian and Superman. The demigods Nian looked at the frail green-haired girl lying on the bed, almost seeing the pallor on her fair face. A surge of rage surged within him, and his silver hair, radiating a destructive aura, fluttered behind him. The little emperor leaped from Nian's hand, leaping onto the table beside the bed, gently licking his paw. Nian took a deep breath, quickly stepped forward, and said in a deep voice, "Tell me, who hurt you so badly?" "Stupid little brother." The green-haired girl on the bed gave him a sullen look and said weakly, "You're overthinking it. There's no one in the city capable of hurting me." Nian was stunned for a moment. Then, on second thought, it wasn't an exaggeration. Lorna's abilities were too powerful, and they were just enough to counter the metal-wielding superheroes in this city, like Iron Man and Captain America. The only possible threat to Lorna was the Hulk, but he'd now reformed and openly joined the Avengers during the Battle of New York. Guan Luo's spiritual thoughts entered Nian's mind. "Judging from your human's physical condition, she should be having a fever." Nian immediately reached out to push back Lorna's green hair. The moment he placed his palm on the girl's forehead, he felt a distinct burning sensation. Her skin wasn't even a speck of sweat, as if you were touching a piece of metal forged in flames. This temperature was significantly higher than a normal fever. An ordinary person would have died long ago. "You have a fever. I'll take you to the hospital," Nian said, reaching out to the girl, trying to pick her up. Lorna struggled slightly, then pushed her hand away with her limp hands. Nian frowned, understanding her meaning. You don't want to go to the hospital. Lorna nodded slightly. Her tense spirit seemed to relax after Nian's arrival, and her small, frail, curled-up body unfurled slightly. But your fever is too severe? Nian thought, pondering. Are you afraid the hospital might collect your blood and reveal your unique constitution or genes? Many extraordinary people seem wary of this. For example, Nian's Aunt Diana and childhood sweetheart Gwen had never been to the hospital for a checkup. Their exceptional physical strength made them less susceptible to injury, and even if they were injured, they would likely have recovered before reaching the hospital. As for Supergirl Kara's unique Kryptonian physique, even at the hospital, even the sharpest metal needle couldn't penetrate her outer skin. But Polaris Lorna was different. Her extraordinary ability lay in her manipulation of magnetism, and her physical strength wasn't much stronger than an average person's. Responding to Nian's question, Lorna, lying in bed, nodded, then shook her head, her lips, a translucent pale hue, hesitant to speak. That's one reason. Are there other reasons we can't go to the hospital? A flash of understanding flashed in Nian's eyes. Just then, Guanluo's spiritual thoughts continued, someone's coming this way. It's a woman. Guanluo didn't need to remind her. Nian, his features semi-divine, had already heard the crisp sound of high heels in the corridor outside his room. The woman in the corridor outside stopped at the closed door, knocked a few times, and asked in awe, Boss Lorna, you haven't left the house for a long time and haven't even had dinner. Is there anything I can help you with? Are you feeling unwell? The woman continued, hearing no response. In the dark room, Nian narrowed his eyes slightly. The woman wasn't so much concerned as taking the opportunity to gather information, to learn about Nian's current situation. At this moment, Nian, who looked more like a young woman than usual, supported Nian, who was sitting on the edge of the bed, and with some effort, sat up. After a moment's thought, she uttered a cold, forceful voice, I'm fine. I just don't have a good appetite today. Don't bother disturbing my sleep. Okay, Boss Lorna. The woman's heart trembled slightly, not daring to ask further questions. She hurriedly stepped away on her high heels, supporting herself until Nian walked downstairs. Helping Nian to sit up, Nian had no more strength left. She used Nian as a mattress, her limp body collapsing into his arms. Despite this, the frail Luna still said proudly, I'll use your body. Is that okay with you, little brother? Of course not. Feel free to use it, boss. The demigod's Nian smiled and embraced the girl. It was then that he realized the girl, always so strong and powerful, was actually incredibly light, soft, and petite. She seemed even more fragile than Wanda had been when she collapsed in his arms. Nian looked down at the girl's pale, stubborn face and suddenly said, as the boss, you're afraid others will see your weakness, even your own people. Luna nodded silently. This was the main reason she refused to go to the hospital even with a fever. Nian fell silent. As he had imagined when he first met Luna, to become the leader of an underground gang at such a young age, she must have put in more effort than anyone else. It now seemed that her situation was even more difficult than he had imagined. Even as a gang leader, she was constantly under scrutiny. When she could unleash her extraordinary abilities, the others naturally acted obediently. If they discovered the girl had lost her powers, or was feeling sick and weak, some might seize the opportunity to attack. So, on this night, when she was at her weakest, the girl, without anyone to rely on, chose to send that somewhat embarrassing message for help, even for someone as strong and proud as her. Don't worry, everything's fine now. In the darkness, the young man gently embraced the girl, like the sun embracing the North Star, because I'm here. Lorna's hot breathing gradually became even, and her soft body rested in Nian's arms, her brows closed in peace as she fell asleep, though her small hands still clutched his clothes. Daddy, the sleeping Lorna suddenly whispered. Nian felt even more fond of the girl. He whispered, Guanluo, is there any way you can alleviate her condition? It's simple, Guanluo replied with his mind, I can directly absorb the burning energy within her body. Nian was speechless for a moment. Why didn't you say so earlier? Isn't this your chance to show off? Guanluo replied lazily. Hurry up. Nian held the sleeping girl in one hand and took out a glass jar from his school bag with the other hand. After the glass jar was opened, the colorful one-eyed starfish inside stretched out one of its starfish claws, and gently touched the sleeping Lorna's brow with one end. 5 seconds later, Guan Luo retracted his extended claws, as if it had absorbed a lot of human energy. Its volume expanded a circle compared to before, and it almost broke the jar. Xinian reached out and touched Lorna's forehead, feeling a normal warmth and coolness. The effect could only be described as super fast. Guan Luo said with his mind, "She's fine. But after so much energy was sucked away, her body is still very weak. She needs to rest well for a day or two." Guan Luo. Xinian looked at the starfish in the jar, and said with heartfelt emotion, "I know why Batman can't bear to part with you. You are really useful." Guan Luo. Chapter 125 Night Attack, The Power of Demigod. Around 11 o'clock at night, the semi-deified Nian sat motionless beside the bed, acting as a mattress puppet, letting the oversized doll-like girl, Luna, sleep in his arms, her gentle, even breathing. The young Yuan devouring beast, Xiaohuang, was equally sleepy, lying soundly asleep in his bed. This foodie and sleeper, Xinian was accustomed to. On the table, a colorful starfish in a glass jar bathed in the moonlight streaming in from the window, reminiscing about the days of wandering the starry sky. Despite the occasional bustle of noise outside the car wash, everything in this small room seemed peaceful and beautiful. "Someone's coming again." Guan Luo opened his jewel-like eyes and sent a spiritual message to Xinian. Xinian opened his eyes, his gaze fixed on the door, and a slight frown crept into his brow. This time, he didn't notice the footsteps in the corridor outside. Clearly, the other person had deliberately kept their steps quiet. It was a sign of ill will. Guan Luo continued to send out his mental thoughts. Male, approximately 35 years old, bald, tall. Strange, his energy and spirit are extremely unstable. At the same time, as the other party approached within 3 meters of the room's door, Xinian heard the faint sound of footsteps. The light seeping in through the cracks of the tightly locked door was slightly blocked. Swish! Under Xinian's vigilant gaze, he saw a hint of hot smoke rising from the center of the wooden door, followed by a fiery blaze from the outside in. The next moment, the door erupted in flames from the center. His eyes shrouded in the flames and the rage within him, the demigod Xinian asked calmly and emotionlessly, "Guan Luo, does he have any weapons?" "A flamethrower." "No, he doesn't have any weapons." As Guan Luo's doubtful thoughts echoed, the center of the doorway was first consumed by the intense flames. A man, unfazed by the heat and flames, dashed through countless burning wood chips and into the room. Xinian looked up and saw the man with a big bald head, exactly the same as Guan Luo described. However, the bald man's eyes were burning red like flames, especially his hands. The skin on his bare palms and arms was transparent, and the blood underneath was flowing in his veins like lava. He was carrying a scorching heat that ordinary people could not bear, and rushed into Luna's room with a gust of hot wind. The bald man's face was hideous and terrifying. When he forced his way into the room by the wooden door and saw Xinian holding Luna by the bed, a look of confusion flashed in his eyes, but the next second he rushed towards the two of them without hesitation. Perhaps because she was in Xinian's arms, Polaris Luna was not on guard at this time. As he rushed over, not only the bald man's arms and palms, but also his chest and lower abdomen were glowing with heat, so much so that his short-sleeved shirt was on fire. Like half a fireman. The bald man's speed was also faster than that of an ordinary person. At such a close distance, most people really couldn't react to this sudden attack. What a pity. Xinian at that moment was no ordinary person, but rather, a semi-deified being. He quickly stood up, clutching Luna in his arms, and with incredibly quick reflexes, he kicked out with his right foot, sending the bald man flying. Bang! The force of the kick sent the bald man flying backwards. He completely smashed through the flaming remains of the wooden door, cracked the fence and the corridor outside, and plummeted from the 3rd floor to crash into a jeep parked in the yard below. The jeep's roof caved in, its windows shattering. The resounding explosion set off alarms in the surrounding vehicles. What happened? Enemy attack. This kick jolted everyone in the car wash, both those awake and those asleep. Awake. My car. A tattooed young man, startled awake, rushed in through the outer gate. Seeing the half-destroyed jeep, billowing smoke, he clutched his head and let out a wailing cry. However, his wailing soon stopped. The tattooed young man opened his eyes wide in surprise, and saw a bald man with a red body and emitting scalding hot smoke crawling out from the sunken roof of the jeep, like a demon from purgatory. What the hell? The people inside and outside the car wash who saw this scene all gasped. On the third floor, in a room. What happened? Luna was also woken up, and forgot to change her tone, and asked softly. It's okay, I'll take care of it, and I'll be back soon. Nian said as he gently put Luna on the bed. He warned, Guanluo, Zio Wang, you two protect her. Don't let anyone enter this room except me. Got it. Guanluo on the table sent out a spiritual thought. Zio Wang jumped next to Luna's body, like a little guardian angel, his eyes emitting a faint blue light. The demigod's Nian glanced down at his right foot. The sole of his canvas shoe had mostly melted, and the fabric itself was ablaze. The heat was intense. He simply removed both shoes. Under the gaze of over 20 pairs of startled eyes, he walked straight out of Luna's room and leaped down the third-floor hallway. Strike! Falling straight from a height of 10 meters, Nian didn't even bother to break his stride, leaving cracks on the ground beneath his feet. His long silver hair flew wildly behind him as he glared coldly at the attacker standing in the car ahead. You dare to attack my boss? Is that all you've got? The demigod Nian, wearing a baseball cap and a mask, his only exposed eyes gleaming with a gleaming, emotionless gaze fixed on the bald man, whose fever continued to rise. The bald man's chest, visibly indented by the kick, was now healing at a visible rate. The bald man roared angrily, leaped from the car, and charged at the silver-haired boy again. Watching him swing his fist in the 1,000-degree heat, Nian stood still and swung his right fist as well. When Nian's seemingly ordinary punch collided with the bald man's scorching fist, the bald man's eyes widened in disbelief as his entire right arm exploded, countless red-hot flesh and bones splattering like molten lava onto the half-destroyed Jeep. Nian shook his head. A demigod's physique might seem powerless against a Kryptonian or Doomsday, but that didn't mean it couldn't even stand up to the weaklings. Nian stretched out his hand, and a shimmering golden lasso instantly bound the bald man with a broken arm, immobilizing him. Tell me, what is your purpose? Nian demanded. The lasso of truth was beginning to manifest its full power. The bald man blurted out, even if we both perish, we must kill our target, Lorna. What? Coming for our boss? Hearing the exclamations of the surrounding people, Nian knew the man before him was an outsider. Was he sent by another faction? Nian continued, who is your boss behind this? Killian. The bald man had just uttered a name when, not only did his arms and chest burn red, but his face twisted in agony. His skin quickly turned translucent, and his internal heat continued to soar, causing his body to swell slightly. As if sensing a premonition, the semi-deified Nian immediately raised the lasso of truth, throwing the bound bald man high into the air. The moment his body hit the car wash ceiling, the bald man's red and burning body exploded like a bomb. His body instantly turned to ash and evaporated. The intense heat from the explosion melted through the top iron shed. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.